Chapter 1677. In other words, he used his noble phantasm to destroy all the islands. It seems to be quite powerful. He seems to be a powerful hero spirit, but he's just an idiot who doesn't use his brain. This was the first time he had heard of such a willful, heroic spirit. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. Heroic spirits like this were sometimes easier to deal with. An intelligent and powerful figure was the most difficult to deal with. It's good to be impulsive. Then, Tashiomi and Naka smiled in relief and said in a tone that suggested there was nothing to be afraid of. There's no need to worry. There's no need to be afraid of such a powerful, young, heroic spirit. A poisonous snake that knows how to endure and hide in the dark is the most terrifying. Tashiomi smiled elegantly and poured himself a glass of red wine. He was glad that Dustless was an idiot who did not know when to stop. But Yin Fengili frowned slightly. Master hasn't had the time to watch the video. That guy's master seems to be Takamiya Cheshire's wife, Alice Phil. Hearing that, he spat out the red wine that he had just drunk. His good mood was gone. Tashiomi Inosaka's face was dark, and his hands were sweating. If that was the case, Alice Field would definitely do her best to assist Wei Gongqizi in obtaining the Holy Grail. Even if Dustless was an idiot with low IQ, his destructive power was still extremely strong. No matter how bad a heroic spirit's combat power was, it was definitely stronger than a human's. When did they come to Domu City? Once they arrive, order your assassin to ambush them immediately. Also, send this video to the other masters through the secret channel. If everyone knows about it, we might work together to deal with them. The assassin that was killed by Dustless was just a clone of Assassin. In the evening, Dustless, who was dragging 3 people, finally arrived at Domu City. As soon as they arrived at their destination, Takeo Juyu left impatiently. She might have gone to look for Takamiya Cheshire. TSK. Miss Takeo Juyu and Mr. Takamiya are really close. Dustless walked to Alice Phil and deliberately raised his voice to insinuate something. Saber reflexively kicked out, but Dustless dodged in time. However, Saber was Saber after all. She turned around and hugged Dustless tightly. Then, she dragged Dustless a short distance away. Are you trying to sow discord between us? As far as heroic spirits are concerned, this is simply too despicable. Saber, who was holding on to Dustless tightly, scolded loudly. Please don't do anything that will tarnish the reputation of the heroic spirits. Everyone will be humiliated if you do that. Cough, cough, cough. Before we talk, can you please send me off first? Dustless awkwardly glanced at Saber, who was hugging him tightly. He lowered his head and said helplessly, Saber, with all due respect, you don't seem to understand the nature of the Holy Grail War. Dustless, do you think I'm an ignorant little girl? How can I not understand this kind of thing? Saber pouted and complained unhappily. She felt that her intelligence was being insulted by Dustless. The so-called Holy Grail War was actually 7 sorcerers and their heroic spirits fighting against each other. The end result was also quite simple. The winner was king. No, you misunderstood me. Dustless shook his head when he heard that. His eyes shone brightly as he explained, the reason why you joined the Holy Grail War this time should be because of the universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail, right? To be honest, I'm actually here for it as well. However, everyone seems to have gotten one thing wrong. Aren't all the Sarvant and Satyr doing this for the same purpose? Saber nodded affirmatively. No, everyone has made a mistake. The so-called Holy Grail can only fulfill one person's wish, and us candidates, including all the Masters and Sarvant, have a total of 14 people. No, after including myself and Alice Phil, the total number of candidates added up to 16. Dustless raised his voice and said meaningfully, even if you defeat everyone in the end, do you think Weigon Keisai will give the Holy Grail to you? This, Keisai will probably give the Holy Grail to me. Saber lowered her head in uncertainty. Who knows what choice Weigon Keisai will make in the end? Saber, I can tell you clearly, if you win and defeat all the Masters and Sarvant, then Weigon Keisai will probably use the command spell to make you commit suicide. This way, The Holy Grail will be his alone. That guy has an extremely naive dream. He wants to eliminate all evil in this world. This is simply a fool's dream. Such a thing is impossible. Where there are people, there will be conflict. This is fated. Unless that guy wipes out all of humanity, then there will only be justice left in this world. Dustless's tone was filled with a bewitching charm. Every word he said was like a gem to Saber. It was very convincing. After all, these were undeniable facts. In the original work, Inaka Tashimi had actually planned to do so. After the Hero King killed all the heroic spirits, Inaka Tashimi would use the command spell to order Gilgamesh to commit suicide. His method was very sinister. How would you know such a thing? Saber stared at Dustless with a face full of questions. About this, Dustless felt a headache coming on. He couldn't possibly say that he had transmigrated, right? He could only make up a reason to fool Saber. You immature fledglings do not understand the truth. I have participated in 3 Holy Grail Wars. No, including this Holy Grail War, I have participated in 4 Holy Grail Wars. In the past, I had helped the Masters defeat all their enemies. However, those 3 shameless Masters used the command spell to order me to commit suicide. Chapter 1678. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She stared at Dustless and fixed her gaze on him. She could not move anymore. She did not expect Dustless to have such a torturous experience. I don't think Ji-Shi is that kind of person. After hesitating for a while, Saber finally chose to believe Ji-Shi. It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Most of my previous masters were cunning and despicable anyway, Dustless said nonchalantly. He knew that his plan to trick Saber into betraying him had failed. If it was a Chinibyu like Gilgamesh, he might have been able to trick her into betraying Tashimi Nagasaka. No, in the original work, Gilgamesh betrayed Tashimi Nagasaka and joined Yin Feng Chili. However, Saber was different. It was impossible for her to be as unprincipled as Gilgamesh. She deeply believed in the spirit of chivalry and viewed traitors as disgraceful scum. It was unrealistic to think that he would betray Wei Gong Kisi with just a few words. Moreover, even if Saber betrayed Ji-Shi, she did not seem to have a suitable master. At that moment, Dustless suddenly raised his eyebrows. The boredom on his face disappeared and was replaced by excitement. Is there something wrong? Saber asked with a frown. She subconsciously looked at Alice Phil. She and Dustless were both powerful heroic spirits. Naturally, they would not be afraid of other heroic spirits. The only weak one was Alice Phil, who was her master. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. He looked at Alice Phil. As expected, a black shadow was rushing toward them. How despicable! Saber snorted angrily. She quickly swooped down with her sword. His aura is hidden very well. It's almost impossible to catch him. Moreover, this Sarvangt is a new face. Could he be assassin who specializes in assassination? He has a lot of doppelgangers. His methods are despicable, but he's smart. He knows that it's not me and Saber, so he's actively looking for weaker prey to attack. Dustless touched his chin. He suddenly thought of a black-bellied priest, Yin Feng Chili. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from behind him. Dustless subconsciously turned his head, and a cold dagger was mercilessly stabbing towards his heart. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force erupted, and the black shadow that had launched a sneak attack was immediately sent flying. Boom, boom, boom. The black shadow that was sent flying smashed into the surrounding streets, leaving a long mark on the ground. It seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage, and there were obvious dents on its body. Is it really assassin? Dustless raised his eyebrows and subconsciously glanced at Saber's opponent, who was also assassin. There seemed to be quite a number of such doppelgangers. Yin Feng Chili. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Aiming at the wailing black shadow, a cold light flashed from his fingertip and mercilessly shot over. Void Flash. The colorful energy ball charged up for a moment before it locked onto Assassin and blasted toward her. Boom, boom, boom. The powerful flash swept her away, and the streets on both sides were instantly turned into nothingness by the energy released by Void Flash. At the same time, Saber's battle also came to an end. The result was without a doubt. Saber had completely defeated her opponent. This combination is very troublesome, Master. In a secret room somewhere, Yin Feng, Qili, and Tashiomi Inaka sat together. The battle screen in front of them was the scene of Dustless and Saber's battle. Yeah, both of them are pretty strong. That Saber is the strongest job class, and this strange Yendi is also a pretty strong heroic spirit. Tashiomi Inaka nodded solemnly and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Originally, he and Yin Feng, Qili, and a strong heroic spirit like Gilgamesh had given them the confidence to win this Holy Grail war. Who would have thought that the 8th heroic spirit would suddenly jump out? Yendi Dustless. He had ruined a great victory. Just thinking about it made Tashiomi Inaka feel constipated. Moreover, Yendi Dustless and Saber were bound to be an Iron Alliance. It couldn't be broken up so easily. After all, their masters were husband and wife. We can also join forces with the other masters. An idea flashed through Yin Feng's mind. He leaned close to Tashiomi Inaka's ear and whispered, "Master, we can totally do that. For example, we can join forces with that Gumph. Despicable and vile people. Leave that kind of bastard to me alone." At that moment, an extremely arrogant and disdainful voice sounded. A golden flash entered Yin Feng, Qili, and Tashiomi Inaka's eyes. Looking at it carefully, this person was completely golden. He wore golden armor and had short golden hair. His expression was unruly, as arrogant as a god looking down on ants. "Where are those two bastards? Tell me, and I'll personally eliminate these two eyesores," Gilgamesh said arrogantly. Joining forces with the other heroic spirits is an insult to this king. But let's see the situation first. Tashiomi Inaka was secretly angry, but facing Gilgamesh, he really couldn't bring out any confidence. He could only nod and agree. In fact, he really wanted to say to Gilgamesh, "You are a super big idiot who doesn't care about anyone else." In fact, at this moment, not only Tashiomi Inaka and Yin Feng, but the other masters and servants were also frowning. In the previous Holy Grail War, such a thing had never happened. Two heroic spirits stood on the same side, while the other heroic spirits were all alone. In comparison, they were at a great disadvantage. Chapter 1679. My king, why don't we observe for a while? Find out how Saber and the male heroic spirit's noble phantasm are moving. Tashiomi Inosaka's expression was respectful as he lowered his head. He was more respectful than seeing his own father. "What you say makes sense, you bastard. This one will listen to your arrangements. I hope this gathering won't make this one feel bored and depressed." Gilgamesh's body lost its texture and turned into a golden light that dissipated. The Hero King's ability to put on airs is better than fighting. Yin Feng Qili saw the miserable Tashiomi Inosaka and couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes, it's not necessarily a good thing for a heroic spirit to be too strong. Tashiomi Inosaka was called a bastard, and he couldn't refute it, but he had to be respectful. You can imagine how depressed Tashiomi Inosaka was. At this time, in another direction, more and more assassin doppelgangers came to attack from all directions. It was obvious that they had been deliberately instructed to attack Alice Phil, who was weaker in terms of strength. 90 Black Coffin. The black light that was enough to cut a mountain flashed out of thin air and cut the assassins in front of them. Even so, there were still many splits. There are too many assassins. Saber's hair was slightly messy, and she was panting, looking tired. Their intention is very simple. They want to force us to use our noble phantasm. Dustless was familiar with Yin Feng Qili's intention. "I'm afraid that we have been targeted by many heroic spirits." Observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a few hundred meters fell into Dustless's eyes. Oh, the final king Gilgamesh, the Conqueror King, and Lancer Delumido Odina are secretly watching the changes in the battle. Dustless's mouth curled into an imperceptible smile. In the original work, Lancer might have come out to cause trouble at this time. Now that Dustless and Saber were allies, this unexpected change might make him hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. For a moment, he hesitated whether to go to war with Dustless and Saber. Whoosh! Several sharp sounds came into his ears. Dustless looked up and saw more than a dozen noble phantasms pouring down. This dazzling light, is it the king's treasure? Dustless's face showed a nostalgic look. The ability of Gate of Babylon was not limited to Gilgamesh. But it's really a pity that your opponent is me, Dustless said softly as the spiritual pressure in his body surged. Binding paths, 81st step, air severing. In an instant, a transparent barrier appeared in front of Dustless. How dare you try to block this king's light with such a fragile object? You're overestimating yourself. The street lamp suddenly turned black as a stream of light materialized. Standing on it was none other than Hero King Gilgamesh. Bastards who are hiding in the surroundings, come out for this king. Gilgamesh's arrogant eyes swept across the surroundings. His voice was like thunder, spreading over a radius of several hundred meters. Who is this arrogant, heroic spirit? Since you're so arrogant, do you dare to tell me your name? Lancer, who was holding 2 guns, had no choice but to walk out from the darkness. Who knows? I didn't expect that other than me, there would be someone else who dares to call himself a king. A rough and heroic voice came from the sky. A tall and strong man who was riding 2 mighty bulls also descended from the sky. However, among these 8 heroic spirits, one of them is about to die. How sad. Gilgamesh looked down at Dustless arrogantly. He turned a deaf ear to the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Bang, bang, bang. The falling treasures all landed on the enchantment. Everyone thought that the enchantment would collapse on the spot, but who would have thought that it was unexpectedly sturdy and nothing happened at all? On the contrary, Gilgamesh's attacks were all blocked. You're just a so-called king. You don't know your place. Dustless looked at Gilgamesh hopelessly. He couldn't help but find it funny. After all, he was just the king of a narrow land. What did he have to be so arrogant? You bastard. When Gilgamesh heard what was said, his face twisted. His scarlet eyes were filled with anger. Gilgamesh felt that he was being humiliated by Dustless's unscrupulous gaze. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless ripples appeared in the void behind him. Soon after, a large number of golden weapons appeared. Each of them was dazzling and sharp. They could all be called masterpieces. It was undeniable that Gilgamesh was only interested in the best items. He probably wouldn't even look at trash. This guy, the Conquest King, had a serious expression. He looked at the large amount of light above Gilgamesh's head and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. At first glance, they were all relics. You can tell where this guy came from. Which era is he a hero from? Conquest King Iskandar asked the skinny young man beside him. Who knows? In short, this guy is very strong. The young man rolled his eyes and said, I asked you to watch the battle, but you insisted on coming out to cause trouble. You even said that you wanted to persuade the other heroic spirits to be your subordinates. Such actions are extremely foolish. The young man was called Weber Velvet. Conquest King Iskandar's master. Although I don't know which era Golden Twinkle came from, there might be a heroic spirit appearing now. Lancer looked at the gorgeous light with a serious expression. He didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, his gaze locked onto Dustless was filled with pity. Be careful, Dustless. Saber also noticed the abnormality here. She quickly rushed over to provide support, but she was forcefully stopped by Assassin. Both parties were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Seems like I've been underestimated. Dustless touched his nose in amusement. Without giving Gilgamesh a chance to attack, he turned into a flash and appeared behind him. The light was fleeting, and no one noticed it. They only saw Dustless suddenly vanishing. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Hero King. I. Chapter 1680. With the speed of light reaching nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, even if a god came, wanting to see Dustless's trajectory clearly was no different from a dream. much less a mere heroic spirit. Who dares to sneak an attack on this king? Upon hearing this contemptuous voice, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately turned his head. However, what struck him in return was a destructive beam of light. It was so blinding that Gilgamesh's eyes were nearly blinded. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Lightspeed kick. Hero King Gilgamesh suddenly felt an excruciating pain in his face, as though his bones were about to break. He was instantly sent flying. This merciless kick had sent Gilgamesh vanishing without a trace. Bam! The land hundreds of meters away suddenly trembled. Only then did everyone see the miserable Gilgamesh lying on the ground half dead. He only had a weak aura left, but he was barely able to survive. He's so fast. I didn't even see how he appeared behind that golden shimmering body. Web Velvet looked as though he had seen a ghost. Idiot! Even I didn't see it, much less a dabbler like you. Conquest King Iskandar punched Web in the head in a bad mood. His expression was somewhat gloomy. Everyone believed that Dustless was about to be finished off, but who knew that this fellow's tiny universe would erupt, instantly crushing the golden shimmering body? Is that the power of a treasure artifact? Lancer was similarly dumbfounded. He suddenly felt thankful that his enemy was not Dustless, or his outcome would definitely be no different from Gilgamesh's. Furthermore, it wasn't only the Conquest King. In fact, even Lancer did not see how Dustless moved. Bastard, 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 Hero King Gilgamesh touched his cheek. In his rage, he hammered the ground angrily. His right hand was a bloody mess, but he did not feel any pain. Ka. Hero King Gilgamesh's heart shattered into sand, forever unable to heal. As he touched his face, a gigantic footprint was imprinted on his face like a birthmark. This was all thanks to Dustless. Wow, you have become a lot more handsome. After carefully scrutinizing Hero King Gilgamesh, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and continued striking him. As expected of a king, that handsome face of yours is definitely unparalleled. Dustless's words attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Hero King Gilgamesh's face in unison as they roared with laughter. Ha! What's up with that guy? There's actually a shoe print on his face. Coupled with his sullen expression, it's just too exciting. Iskandar the Conquest King laughed so hard that his eyes were watering and his stomach was hurting. It's indeed comical. Lancer wore an odd expression as he stared at the footprint on Hero King Gilgamesh's face. Haha, well done. It's best if this hateful Hero King is beaten up by others. Ha ha! Tashiomi and Osaka, who was in the same room as Yin Feng Kiri, also saw this scene through a special screen. When he saw the clear shoe print on Hero King Gilgamesh's face, he felt abnormally refreshed. He even specially opened a bottle of champagne. Darn Hero King. It's good that he's taught a lesson like this. It saves him the trouble of putting on that disgusting face of his all day. This guy doesn't have any awareness of being a servant. It's as though I owe him everything. Tashiomi and Osaka took a sip of his red wine and smiled elegantly. There was nothing wrong with Gilgamesh suffering a setback. It allowed him to face the strength of other heroic spirits. It would save him the trouble of calling himself a bastard every time he opened his mouth. That heroic spirit, sure, is ridiculously strong. He was able to send Hero King Gilgamesh flying with a kick. He must have been an important figure when he was alive. That punk Kamiya Kasiki sure is lucky. It's fine if he has Saber helping him, but now he has such a powerful heroic spirit. He's like a tiger that has grown wings. Yin Feng Kiri looked nervous and was not as happy as Tashiomi and Osaka. In a short period of time, his assassin army was nearly wiped out. Let's join forces with the other masters. That way, our chances of victory will be greater. Tashiomi and Osaka was secretly delighted for a moment before regaining his composure. After all, Hero King Gilgamesh was his servant. It was fine to be happy for him, but he could not kick him while he was down. After all, they still had to work together to deal with the other masters. Is that all you've got? You can call yourself a king with such half-baked standards? I think I can become a god. Squinting his eyes, Dustless teased with a faint smile. Tisk TSK. That face of yours is so domineering, no matter how I look at it. Bastard, don't get carried away. Hero King Gilgamesh stared at Dustless with a ferocious expression. A beam of light that was hundreds of meters long appeared in the void. At least a few thousand treasures flew out from it. This punk will use parting sword EA sooner or later after being provoked by me. Dustless stroked his chin. He was also the owner of the king's treasure, so he naturally understood Gilgamesh's ability. So. Cold beams shot over like torrential rain. Thousands of weapons launched their attacks at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular. Conquest King Iskandar and Lancer quickly retreated, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. How can such attacks be effective against me? There's no need to even dodge, much less defend against them. Dustless shook his head and simply stood in place without moving. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. His body was constantly being shattered by the sword beams, but Dustless did not fall to the ground. He did not even bleed or suffer from the most basic injuries. This scene dealt a heavy blow to Hero King Gilgamesh. The enemy was right in front of you, but you did not have the ability to hurt him. Instead, you're being humiliated and ridiculed by your opponent. Was there anything more tragic than this in the world? Hero King Gilgamesh hated Dustless to the core. This rascal had looked down on him for no reason. Now, he had even used sorcery to ignore his attacks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Gilgamesh felt terrible and was about to explode. Chapter 1681. Gilgamesh's face was contorted. It was no wonder he was so furious. He had an extremely conceited temper to begin with. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. For an ordinary person to look at him directly was the greatest insult to Gilgamesh. Now that Dustless had taught him a lesson, Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. Shoo! 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 No matter how he attacked, he was unable to harm Dustless. That calm face was silently mocking Gilgamesh's powerlessness and frailty. I'll stand here and let you hit me. The key is, can you hit me? You have completely infuriated me, bastard. Gilgamesh's face was even more contorted. His scarlet eyeballs protruded outwards as though they could fall out at any moment. He was really about to go berserk. I've never liked to cause trouble, but Dustless's eyelids lifted slightly as he revealed a cold look. If you insist on courting death, if I don't teach you a lesson, I'll be looking down on you, the Hero King. With just you, this king shall tell you. Before Gilgamesh could finish his words, tragedy struck. Yomi no Miyazaka. Dustless's forehead revealed a scarlet Samsara Sharingan as he appeared behind Gilgamesh without any warning. He delivered another merciless kick. Lightspeed kick. Boom, boom, boom. Gilgamesh's body exploded with flames once again as he was engulfed by the flames. His beautiful golden armor was covered in dust as he was sent retreating by Dustless's kick. He was in a sorry state. Shoo! 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 At this moment, a sharp beam suddenly came from behind and was about to pierce through Dustless's head. Clang! 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 At the critical moment, a black figure blocked the sneak attack with a sword. Like a shield, she defended Dustless's back. The cold beam was also intercepted by Saber. You should thank me, Dustless. The person who came to his rescue was Dustless's ally, Saber. Thank you? Saber, do you think I'll be finished off by a scoundrel? Dustless turned his head slightly and glanced at the person who was fighting with Saber. It was Lancer. I don't think you're the kind of person who would ambush someone. Is this Master's command curse? Dustless lowered his head and fell silent as he stared at Lancer, who was drenched in cold sweat and had a pained expression. Then, I have no choice but to destroy you. Dustless, who had kicked Gilgamesh away, suddenly looked at Lancer's head. His eyes turned cold, and the tip of his thumb was already glowing with a destructive light. This guy is my opponent. Seeing that Dustless was about to intervene, Saber hurriedly shouted to stop him. She exerted force in her arms and instantly forced Lancer to retreat. Then, Saber chased after Lancer and launched a fierce attack. She looks like a woman on the outside, but she's a powerful lion on the inside. Lancer looked at Saber in shock. That powerful force had numbed his arm. You should be able to kill me quickly if you join forces with that guy. Why did you let go of such a good opportunity? Lancer expressed his confusion. He knew Dustless's strength. If he joined forces with Saber, it would only be a matter of time before they defeated him. But even if the two of you joined forces, I could still hold on for a while. Lancer added arrogantly. No, you misunderstood me. Saber shook her head and said softly, if Dustless and I joined forces, it would go against the spirit of the Night's Way. If the two of us really joined forces, you wouldn't be able to resist. That guy could even kill you alone. Don't you see? Dustless has been teasing that gold sparkle. Lancer fell silent and looked at the miserable Gilgamesh. This guy was simply the synonym of tragedy. After being beaten and humiliated by Dustless, he lost all his dignity as a heroic spirit. I'm going to kill you, Gilgamesh roared, and the void was filled with countless sword shadows again. The golden vortex kept flashing, and sharp swords shot out, all aimed at Dustless's head. It was enough to see the hatred this petty hero king had for Dustless. What a problematic child. Looking at Gilgamesh, whose face was filled with murderous intent, Dustless let out a long sigh. This guy's strength was second to none, but his tolerance was really unflattering. Then, I'll give you an eye for an eye. With a teasing look on his face, Dustless waved his hand, and the sky behind him also flashed with a large halo. The dazzling light made Gilgamesh's mind go into a trance. He carefully experienced the nature of the power. After a while, Gilgamesh opened his mouth wide. His exaggerated appearance was enough to fit an adult's fist. This kind of energy fluctuation is definitely not wrong. How does this bastard know my ability? Gilgamesh glared angrily, and his teeth were about to shatter. What's the situation with this Holy Grail war? Who's that guy? He even knows how to use the Hero King's ability? Then what use do I have for Gilgamesh? Damn it! Is the Holy Grail going to be given up to that punk, Takamiya Kisi? Not only was Gilgamesh, who was in the middle of a battle, so shocked that his jaw nearly dislocated, even his master, Ino Sakatashimi, was staring at Dustless in shock. Golden light dotted the top of his head, and countless divine weapons slowly poked their heads out. The range was even greater than Gilgamesh's. Imposter, you imposter. Gilgamesh had completely forgotten his appearance as a heroic spirit. He was like a shrew pointing at Dustless, who was using the gate of Babylon, and cursing. His eyes were about to crack, and he was about to suffer from internal injuries. Chapter 1682. The veins on Gilgamesh's forehead were bulging. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. He felt that his dignity and soul had been trampled on by the despicable guy in front of him. Shoot him through. Gilgamesh, who could not take it anymore, took the lead to attack. Divine weapons fell from the sky like a storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dustless did not show any weakness. He immediately launched a deadly counterattack. The lights that decorated his head were also shot out mercilessly. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew everywhere. There were traces of broken steel everywhere. The divine weapons that were shot out by both parties were damaged. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of relics were shot out consecutively, dazzling everyone. Even Saber and Lancer, as well as the Conqueror King Iskandar, were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. All of them were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Why do these two perverts have so many relics? Is God blind? It's not fair. The hero spirits were cursing in their hearts. It was infuriating to compare oneself to others. Damn it, compared to Dustless, Gilgamesh was so angry that he was about to jump up. As the ancient king, the hero king, he was an extremely conceited person. Now that he had been humiliated by Dustless, he was infuriated. Bastard, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The blood-red eyeball shot out a violent aura. A huge light appeared on Gilgamesh's right hand. A strange-looking sword vaguely appeared. Oh no, Gilgamesh is infuriated. In the sealed secret chamber, Yenfone Kaylee and Tashiomi Inaka saw the scene and were shocked. The two of them only hoped that Gilgamesh could test Dustless's strength. It would be best if he could force him to use his relic. Who would have thought that Gilgamesh would be the first to lose his cool? As the master, Tashiomi Inaka was naturally unwilling to be the first to release his relic. This idiot Gilgamesh is infuriated. It's impossible to persuade him to come back. Tashiomi Inaka looked at the Crimson Command incantation in his hand and was frustrated. The only way was to activate the command spell to make Gilgamesh retreat. Otherwise, this idiot would definitely fight to the death with Dustless. Even if Gilgamesh took out his noble artifact, it might not be his doing. Staring at Dustless, Yin Fengqili revealed a confused expression. He still hadn't figured out Dustless's background. "What's the reason, Kiri?" Tashiomi Inosaka asked calmly. "This guy seems to have the same ability as Gilgamesh. If that's the case, the 8th hero spirit is too terrifying," Yin Fengqili said in a low voice. "Are you saying?" Tashiomi's expression changed. He understood what Yin Fengqili was trying to say. He said uncertainly, "That shouldn't be possible. Gilgamesh's EA shouldn't be able to use the 8th hero spirit. To be honest, I think there's a need to reevaluate the 8th hero's strength." Yin Fengqili glanced at Tashiomi Inosaka when he heard this. Then, he stared at the surveillance screen and analyzed. The 8th hero spirit seems to be more familiar with using the king's treasure than Gilgamesh. "It's really hard to guess who the imposter is, Master. Who knows, it might be Gilgamesh imitating someone else. In short, let's get the Hero King to retreat. If this continues, I believe he will be defeated." Tashiomi Inosaka sighed in disappointment. He did not hesitate to activate the command spell to order Gilgamesh to retreat. Aya, is the stray dog retreating?" Dustless looked at Gilgamesh, who was suffused with a golden glow. He knew that Tashiomi Inosaka had ordered Golden Shimmer to retreat. If not, with the Hero King's personality, he would definitely fight to the death. Let's end it here. In the future, just you wait. I will definitely not let you off so easily," Gilgamesh warned fiercely. His flushed face finally recovered a little. On a closer look, Gilgamesh's body was black all over. His armor was covered in black smoke. The funniest thing was that Gilgamesh's hair had also disappeared. He had become a bona fide bald head, all thanks to Dustless. Darn Tashiomi Inosaka. You want to use a laughable title like Your Majesty to appease my anger? Do you think this king is a 3-year-old child? Hero King Gilgamesh was secretly enraged. He vented all his anger on Tashiomi Inosaka. He had appeared to establish his might, but who knew that he would become a stepping stone for Dustless to rise to fame? "Then, what do you plan on doing?" Conquest King. Gilgamesh fled in a sorry state, leaving behind Hero King Iskandar and his master, Wilbur Velvet. Seeing Dustless look at him, the punk's face was as white as a sheet of paper. "Seriously, it looks like my plan of roping you in as my subordinates has failed." Conquest King Iskandar's coarse face revealed a look of regret. How could such an extraordinary expert lower his head to be his lackey? "Farewell. By the way, I'm determined to obtain the Holy Grail." The Conquest King rode the divine might wheel and left. Dustless did not plan on pursuing him. This time, they were just getting to know each other. The next time they met, it would be a merciless fight to the death. After all, there was only one Holy Grail. He had to eliminate all them satyr and their heroic spirits. Why am I the only one left after all this fighting? Lancer, who was in an intense battle with Saber, cursed. He was certain that if Saber and Dustless joined forces, he would definitely be torn to pieces. Chapter 1683. Lancer wanted to cry, but had no tears. In his heart, he cursed the Hero King Gilgamesh and the Conqueror King Iskandar, who ran away. These two bastards were shameless. Seeing that the opponent was strong, they turned around and retreated. Was this what a hero would do? Especially to the Hero King Gilgamesh, who was beaten up like a dog. There's a flaw. Boom, boom, boom. Saber seemed to have noticed the ripples in Lancer's heart. She held the sword with both hands and increased her strength by several levels. She launched a fierce and powerful attack, suppressing Lancer and making it difficult for him to fight back. Damn it, Lancer, who was being beaten back, cursed. He did not expect Saber to have such a sharp eye. Even in such a short moment, she realized that his heart was in a mess. Clang, 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 clang. The loud roars continued, and the volcanoes created by the collision of the weapons kept flashing. Lancer was sweating profusely. A moment of mistake would cause him to be suppressed. Bang! The invisible sword coming at him was even more powerful. Saber became braver and braver as she fought. Her attack forced Lancer to retreat. His body even smashed into the wall, leaving a broken dent. Lancer's mouth was also bleeding. Saber, you're too despicable. Lancer, who was not convinced, showed an angry expression. He pointed at Dustless, who was standing, and shouted, "What's the point of fighting 2 against 1? 2 against 1? Dustless heard him and showed an amused expression. He despised him and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes? When did I sneak attack you? And do you think you can survive 2 against 1? You." Lancer opened his mouth wide and realized that he was speechless. It made sense. Dustless did not intervene in the battle from the beginning to the end. He only watched the battle as if nothing had happened and did not intervene. I'm not convinced. Lancer was too lazy to talk nonsense. It was good that Dustless did not intervene, but the psychological pressure he caused could not be ignored. When you were fighting with others, could you still concentrate with an enemy standing behind you? That's it for today. Your head will be taken by me in the future. Saber held the holy sword with both hands. Her gaze was like a torch that made people look at her differently. Ayo, 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 ayo. At the same time, a raging roar suddenly came. The 3 of them were startled and rushed towards the source of the roar. Their gazes froze. Is this a berserker? Looking at the pitch-black monster, everyone frowned. That extremely oppressive aura was suffocating. Its aura was extremely evil, and it was as terrifying as a demonic hand that had walked out from hell. Saber, be careful. That guy's coming for you. Dustless stood in front of Saber and reminded her. Coming for me? Saber was stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. There seemed to be no hatred between the heroic spirits. I can only see heroic spirits without hatred, but Dustless's eyes glowed with wisdom. What if this guy is someone you once knew? Saber was confused by Berserker's words. She stared at the furious Berserker as if she was trying to find someone who matched him in her memory. Ayo, 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 ayo. King Arthur. Berserker finally let out a series of angry roars. It was very hoarse. His entire body was covered in armor. That voice came from within the armor. No one would doubt that he was a demon disguised as a human. Ayo, ayo, ayo. There was another series of inhuman roars. Then, Berserker suddenly broke the street lamp and dived towards Dustless and Saber. To be more precise, it was Saber. As for Dustless, he was completely ignored by this guy. Bang, bang, bang. Berserker's strength was extremely terrifying. Every step he took left a dent in the ground. He rushed in a straight line, leaving a dent in the ground. You're just a vicious dog. You're too arrogant. The demonic voice rang in Berserker's ears. This voice sounded harmless, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. Even the 2 masters who were hiding in the dark, Kenneth Elmaroy and Jiantong Yin, felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if an invisible knife was placed on their necks. Woo-woo. Even Berserker's body stopped. He hummed twice, as if he was telling Dustless not to meddle in other people's business. Immortal spell. However, his protest was completely ignored by Dustless. He only glanced at him coldly. The chakra in his body surged wildly, and a special red halo appeared between his eyebrows. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, there was an extremely coordinated movement from the depths of the void. Immortal spell, Bright God Gate. Groups of black dots, like a natural disaster, filled everyone's eyes in an instant. This exaggerated formation made people involuntarily think of a natural disaster. What is this? A piece of wood. Lancer looked up at the sky. After seeing what was falling, he immediately took the initiative to distance himself, avoiding close contact with this thing. He had a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Damn it, Berserker, this bastard actually didn't listen to my orders. Who told him to provoke that big shot? Jiantong Yin, who was hiding in the dark, cursed. He did not order Berserker to attack Saber and Dustless. Who knew that this guy would take the initiative to come out and cause trouble? Now, he had angered the 8th heroic spirit. Chapter 1684. Jiantong Yin regretted his decision. If he had known, he would not have brought Berserker, that idiot. It would have been fine if he had just pulled some aggro, but this time he had pulled in 2 extremely powerful heroic spirits, Saber and Dustless. Jiantong Yin had been watching the battle. He had seen Dustless and Saber's performance. Without any exaggeration, they could be considered the strongest heroic spirit duo. When they were alone, their combat power was invincible. Now that they were in a powerful duo, their strength was on another level. This idiot really doesn't know anything. I wanted him to cause trouble for Toshimi Nagasaka, but this guy, Jiantong Yin, wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Countless crows descended in his heart. He cursed Berserker's 18 generations of ancestors. This guy's ability to attract aggro was definitely top-notch. We have no chance of winning. Let's just retreat. Jiantong Yin glanced at the falling bright god gate. Jiantong Yin looked at it with lingering fear, and then he dragged his exhausted body and retreated. Jiantong Yin was not a scumbag. He was only able to become a master because of his father. Boom, boom, boom. The sky full of red wood fell. Berserker extended his speed to the limit, but the area covered by the bright god gate was too wide. There was no way to escape. He was instantly crushed. Boom, 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 boom. Ka, 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 ka. A sea of redwood fell on Berserker's body. His sturdy armor was all smashed, and his entire body was exposed to the air. This is a good chance. Saber's beautiful eyes flashed with passion. When she saw Berserker's armor crumble, she swung Excalibur in her hand. She was about to shatter the heavy armor on Berserker's face. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, good things did not last long. Just as the mask was about to shatter, Berserker's body suddenly turned into mist. He turned into a terrifying black shadow and slowly disappeared. Don't even think about escaping. Saber saw this and groaned. Just as she was about to chase, Dustless stopped her. It's useless, Saber. This guy's master ordered us to retreat. We can't catch him. Grabbing Saber's shoulder, Dustless smiled and said, and this guy's enemy isn't just us. The one who should be having a headache is Toshimi Inaka. You. Saber turned her head and looked straight into Dustless's eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with hesitation as she asked in confusion, sometimes I wonder if you are really a heroic spirit. That's not important. In short, I'm a heroic spirit and your ally. Dustless scratched his head and answered nonchalantly. His actions and the knowledge he had accumulated far surpassed that of the so-called heroic spirits. Let's retreat, Alice. Phil is scared to death. Looking at the dazed Alice Phil not far away, Dustless slowly walked over. She was quite shocked by the bright god gate that filled the entire street. In terms of scale, it was simply too shocking. At this moment, in another direction, such a large-scale attack. This should be his true treasured artifact. Toshimi Inaka and Yin Feng Kaylee were in a daze as they observed the red forest through a special camera. The boundless numbers made their hands cramp as they were unable to determine the exact number. In a flash, it was the next morning. Yesterday's battle had left a shadow in the hearts of many heroic spirits in Seder, especially Hero King Gilgamesh. He did not sleep the entire night as his mind was filled with Dustless's arrogant figure. There was nothing he could do about it. His domineering face had Dustless's footprints on it. It could only be said that it was an unlucky year. In the castle of the Einsbaron family in Dongmu City, Takemiya Kissy and Takeoku had also rushed back from the distant Pacific Ocean. The former's face was filled with fatigue and his eyes were empty. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Takemiya Kissy had been chased by groups of sharks for several hours. Not bad. Your performance was very good. In Takemiya Kissy's bedroom, After hearing about yesterday's battle, his listless and dispirited spirit was finally lifted. He revealed a rare smile, but looked forced. It's just a pity that we didn't get rid of one of them. If Kissy was around, he would definitely be able to assassinate the enemy's master instead of flaunting his prowess and offending all the heroic spirits. Takeo Kuyu stared coldly at Dustless. She did not hide her dissatisfaction. This bastard had left her lover in the sea to be chased by sharks. Takemiya Kissy had been cheated badly. Satyr, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Dustless is not wrong. There's no need for us to assassinate the enemy in such a despicable manner. With Dustless's and my abilities, we can completely wipe out the enemy's servant. It did not matter if Dustless was silent, but Saber immediately stood up to argue. She believed in the spirit of chivalry and scoffed at Takemiya Kissy's despicable methods. She despised them and even looked down on them. Saber is quite righteous. He stared at the righteous Saber with interest. He did not expect her to defend him like this. As for Takeo, Dustless glanced at her and laughed disdainfully in his heart. When I bring Alice and Phil to catch the adulterers, I hope you can still cooperate with each other like this. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, a violent tremor resounded through the sky. A low and dirty sound suddenly resounded through the entire castle of the Einsbaron family. Chapter 1685. Jean d'Arc, my Jean d'Arc, come out and see me. I am Gilles de Lays. After hundreds of years, we finally meet. A heart-wrenching voice resounded through the sky. Looking through the window, they saw a hideous, strangely dressed, devil-like figure appeared outside the castle of the Ahrensberg family. Is this guy Castor? Saber unexpectedly frowned. She didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He even dared to take the initiative to attack them. His behavior was not stupid, but arrogant. After all, there were two heroes here, Dustless and Saber, but Castor was alone. It seems that he is alone, and he can't wait to die. Wei Gong Kisi looked contemplative, then his gray-brown eyes swept around, staring at the large forest in front of him. He seemed to be looking for Castor's accomplice. No, it's a miracle that this guy can come to us now. I thought he would come to us last night. Dustless smiled meaningfully. Castor is a serious infatuated seed. His obsession with love is admirable, but this time, it's a pity that he is confessing his love to the wrong person. By the way, who is Jean d'Arc? We don't have such a person here. Wei Gong Kisi asked inexplicably. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Maybe someone else is framing us, trying to use us to fight Castor. That's a reasonable analysis. Wei Gong Kisi's lover, Q, Mamie nodded. The relationship between these two guys is too good. If I kill Wei Gong Kisi, I'm afraid Q Mamie will turn herself into a suicide bomber to kill me. Dustless glanced at the two people who were intimate. He muttered to himself, turning a deaf ear to their conversation. What he did not know was that through the gap of the door, a bright gaze was quietly staring at Wei Gong Kisi. She observed this scene with mixed feelings and disappointment. Her beloved husband was whispering to another woman. As his wife, how could Alice Phil be at ease? The Joan of Arc that guy was talking about. It's funny, but it's actually Saber. Dustless suddenly revealed an answer that made Wei Gong Kisi and Jiyumami flabbergasted. Do you think we're idiots? Kuyumimi stared at Dustless indignantly. She felt that Dustless was just fooling them. It was ridiculous to say that he had mistaken her for someone else. If it wasn't Dustless talking nonsense, then it was Castor's brain twitching. Joan of Arc, my Joan of Arc, you finally came out to see me. However, the next sentence that Gilles de Rice said made Wei Gong Kisi and Kuyumimi furious. Gilles de Rice looked at Saber, who suddenly appeared with an excited and surprised expression as he shouted loudly, Jean d'Arc, my Jean d'Arc. Who would have thought that after so many years, we would have the opportunity to meet again, my Joan of Arc? Gilles de Les exclaimed excitedly. He almost stood up and began to dance. His eyeballs bulged outward as if they might fall out at any moment. That Castor is an idiot. Kuyumami stared at Gilles de Rice speechlessly. The guy was obviously out of his mind. Saber was King Arthur. She had nothing to do with Joan of Arc. The time difference between the two sides was thousands of years. It's a miracle that he can suppress himself until now. Dustless added again. However, this old guy's ability to rush to his death is really perfect. He knows that when the heroic spirits meet, it will be the end of life and death, but he still dares to take the initiative to come here. TSK, TSK. It's really hard to guess the thoughts of the infatuated man. Castor doesn't seem to be pretending. He seems to really think that Saber is Joan of Arc. Could it be that they look exactly the same? Wei Gong Qixi secretly guessed. He stared at Castor and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Suddenly, there was a flash of light in his mind. He seemed to have thought of something, and he showed an excited expression. This guy wouldn't want Saber to fool that super pervert who likes to kill people, right? Catching Wei Gong Qixi's strange expression, Dustless muttered with some uncertainty. With Wei Gong Qixi's character, he could really do such a crazy thing. In order to get the Holy Grail, sacrificing a heroic spirit, Wei Gong Qixi didn't think that it was not worthwhile. The so-called heroic spirit was actually like a chess piece. Mommy, come with me to see it. Wei Gong Qixi pulled Kuyu Mommy and couldn't wait to rush to the scene. Seeing the brilliance in his eyes, Dustless guessed that this kid had thought of a sinister idea. Alice Phil, don't you want to see it? In the quiet corridor, Dustless stopped in front of the door of Alice Phil's bedroom. He leaned against the wall and sighed. This is inevitable. With your identity, you're destined to not live with Wei Gong Qixi forever. It's normal to have an affair. Even one day, Wei Gong Qixi will kill you personally to fulfill his wish. However, you are my master. I naturally won't let you get hurt. You can rest assured. This is my fate. From the moment I was born, it was destined. Looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window, Alice Phil's face showed a sad smile. As the vessel of the Holy Grail, her final fate was actually destined early on. No matter who the Holy Grail fell on, Alice Phil would inevitably die. Even if Wei Gong Qixi was the final winner, he would not let Alice Phil go. Don't be so pessimistic. There's a phrase called, man can conquer nature. If you want, I can help you change your cruel fate and get rid of the shackles of the Ahrensberg family. Dustless yawned tiredly. He looked lazy, but his tone was firm. Chapter 1686. Castor, please don't confuse people here. I am not the Joan of Arc you're talking about. Saber looked at Castor's crazy eyes. Her nose wrinkled. She was disgusted. No, you are Joan of Arc. Castor shook his head stubbornly and said, Joan of Arc, have you forgotten me? I am Gillis Lay, Sue. Have you forgotten me? Sorry, I don't know you. After searching her memory again, Saber was sure that she didn't know the inexplicable pervert in front of her. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Joan of Arc doesn't recognize me. Hearing that, Castor was furious. He picked up the child he had caught before and crushed his head to vent his anger. Damn you, God. Is this all you're doing? Castor was furious. His face was extremely distorted. He threw the child's body on the ground and smashed it into a bloody foam to vent his anger, and he kept cursing the god with vicious words. You're such a crazy guy, Saber was stunned. She didn't expect that Castor would be so cruel. His actions could be described as the actions of a beast. Any normal hero wouldn't do such a thing to a child. Everyone had dignity and bottom line. Castor's cruel means were so vicious and vicious. If you continue to participate in the Holy Grail War, all the heroes will be insulted by you. So, please disappear, Castor. Saber's face turned cold as she rushed toward Castor with Excalibur in her hand, and the sword swept toward Castor's cheek. It's not that easy to kill me. When Castor saw that, he suddenly jumped back a few meters away. His crazy face showed a nostalgic smile, but it still looked so gloomy and terrible, even more frightening than his twisted face just now. If a demon who killed people like Scything Flax smiled at you like the sun, wouldn't you feel disgusted? Even Saber couldn't help but have goosebumps. Evil and crooked path, go stop, Saber. At this moment, a stern voice stopped Saber's actions. Turning around, it was Wei Gong Qixi and Juyu Wumi who had rushed over, covered in dust. Master, do you have any questions? Saber looked at the smiling Takashi. She suddenly had a bad premonition. She had to remind him, Master, this guy is an evil demon. Even children are not spared. We must get rid of him. After that, Saber stared at Castor again. Looking at his excited face, she knew that he was not a good person, especially the way he stared at her. It made Saber even more disgusted. Saber, let me deal with this matter. However, Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about Saber's opinion. After all, she was just a heroic spirit. As for the child's corpse on the ground, although Wei Gong Keisai was sad, it was only for a short moment. Sacrifices were being made every day in this world. Only by obtaining the Holy Grail, the universal wishing machine, would all the disasters disappear. Castor, to be honest, this girl is your Joan of Arc. Pointing at Saber, Wei Gong Kissy's words made Castor happy, but Saber stared blankly at Wei Gong Kissy. She suddenly understood Wei Gong Kissy's plan. Master, please stop before you go too far. I can understand your eagerness to get the Holy Grail, but I can't accept such a despicable method. Saber was full of anger and said seriously, I am not Joan of Arc. My real name is Artoria Pendragon, King Arthur of ancient Britain. It doesn't matter, Saber. Takeo came to Saber's side and whispered, Saber, this is all for the Holy Grail. You also want to get it to fulfill your wish, right? So the necessary allies are indispensable. But if I cooperate with Dustless, we could defeat the other servant. Saber argued. She despised Takashi's despicable method. Not to mention pretending to be Joan of Arc. Saber couldn't help but vomit when she thought of Castor's disgusting face. We have two heroes on our side, but we have an absolute advantage. But you seem to have forgotten one thing. What if the other heroes also learn from us and form an alliance? And we just got the information that Tashiomi Inosaka and Iskandar the Conqueror have come together. The same is true for several other heroes. Most of them have signs of forming an alliance with each other. In order to win the final victory, it's okay to use a despicable method, but a voice full of disdain fell into Takeo and Saber's ears. Dustless was extremely annoyed. Using your wife as a bait to attract the enemy. This method is disgusting. This is all for justice. Takeo loudly refuted. Bullshit justice. Pursing his lips, Wu Chun ridiculed even more. His words made Jiu Wumi's face turn red. If it weren't for the difference in strength, she would have beaten Wu Chun up to vent her anger. Using Alice Phil as a bait, Saber looked at him blankly. She didn't know what Dustless was talking about. So you still don't know. Glancing at Saber, who didn't know anything, Dustless decisively revealed Takashi's background and said, the reason why Takashi let the three of us act alone is actually to attract the other masters to assassinate us. He and Takeo hid in the dark to snipe the other masters. But this guy's plan was destroyed by me. I threw him into the Pacific Ocean to compete with sharks in swimming. Chapter 1687. How could he be so despicable? Saber was furious. It was fine if he was despicable to the enemy, but he was so shameless to his own people. Saber couldn't stand it anymore, especially when he intended to use his wife as bait. How could there be such a despicable person in this world? Master, I will never acknowledge your twisted justice. Saber stared at Wei Gong Kissy's back. This guy was simply shameless. You bastard, are you trying to drive a wedge between us? Jiu Wumi grabbed Wu Chen's collar. When she was about to scold him, she suddenly felt that she was being stared at by a powerful creature. She felt a chill down her spine. It seemed that she might die in the next second. Her whole body was cold. She looked up and saw Dustless with a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, making Jiu Mamie's soul tremble. This guy's eyes are so scary. Fear flashed through her eyes. Jiu Mamie quickly let go of Dustless's collar and took the initiative to put some distance between them. No matter what, Dustless was a heroic spirit, and she was just a mortal. The difference between them was countless dimensions. Saber, don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. This is all a rumor he made up. Jiu Mamie glared at Dustless fiercely. Anyone could see that this guy was trying to drive a wedge between Saber and Wei Gong Kissy. No, What he said is the truth. At this moment, Wei Gong Qixi frankly admitted, just like what Dustless said, I plan to use Dustless, Saber, and Aliceville to attract the attention of master and servant. This guy is guts. Dustless touched his chin and couldn't help but look at Wei Gong Qixi in a new light. But immediately after, Wei Gong Qixi lowered his voice and shouted, I want to be a partner of justice. Some sacrifices are inevitable. Even if I kill Aliceville with my own hands one day, I can't do anything about it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as Wei Gong Qixi finished speaking, a black shadow approached him at the speed of sound. Damn scum. How dare you use my Joan of Arc to attract other people's firepower? Go to hell and repent. Bang. Wei Gong Qixi was sent flying with a single punch, and even a few of his teeth were knocked out. His face was slightly sunken in, and there was a clear red fist imprint on it. And the person who attacked Wei Gong Qixi was Castor. Well done. Dustless gave a thumbs up to Castor. It was the first time he thought that the homicidal maniac was so cute. Which side are you on, you bastard? Be clear about your position. Kuyumami's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on her forehead. She loudly reprimanded Dustless. Remember that you are Aliceville's servant, and Aliceville is Wei Gong Qixi's wife. So what? That's their relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Although Saber and I are on the same side, it's hard to be loyal to such a master. It's fine if he plotted against others, but even Saber and I were plotted against by Wei Gong Qixi. Forgive me for being unable to accept this. Kuyumami almost vomited blood when she heard that. She pointed at Dustless while trembling. She didn't expect that there was someone in the world who could be shameless to this point. Wei Gong Qixi planned to do this, but before all of this could be implemented, Wei Gong Qixi was thrown into the sea by Dustless to play a swimming competition with the man-eating sharks in the Pacific Ocean. Bang, bang, bang. Wei Gong Qixi, who was caught by Castor, was beaten violently. The power of a hero spirit was incomparable. With just a few punches, Wei Gong Qixi's cheeks were badly mutilated. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At that moment, a ray of light rushed toward Castor's side, and a small foot covered with light hit Castor's ferocious face with full force. Lightspeed kick. Boom, boom, boom. That merciless kick sent Castor flying more than 10 meters away. He glanced at Wu Chun and Wei Gong Qixi fiercely, and then glanced at Saber reluctantly, and then he ran away awkwardly. It's not that Dustless wanted to save Wei Gong Qixi, but after that guy died, Saber would inevitably disappear. This guy is very cruel. I'm afraid that the recent child serial murder case reported in the news was done by him. Wei Gong Qixi stood up with an ugly face. He originally wanted to pull Castor into his camp. If the three servants joined forces, the Holy Grail would be easy to get, but who would have thought that this guy was so unreasonable? He beat him up without saying a word. Not to mention his teeth. In the end, he didn't even get a strand of hair. The most unbearable thing for Wei Gong Qixi was that he was beaten black and blue by Castor. Soon, someone will clean up Castor. Dustless stared blankly at the disappearing Castor. He still remembered that in the original work, Enosaka Tashimi joined forces with the church and other masters to suppress Castor, and the final reward was an extra command seal. But in fact, it was just a simple trap. Enosaka Tashimi and the church secretly colluded with each other. The essential purpose was to let the other masters fight, and in the end, the Hero King would solve the problem. The command seal naturally belonged to Enosaka Tashimi, but the Hero King disdained to deal with Castor, so Castor was killed by Saber. In the end, Enosaka Tashimi didn't even get a strand of hair, but gradually drifted away from the Hero King. Chapter 1688. Forget it, don't worry about that guy. Let's deal with the others first. Suddenly, Wei Gong Qixi took a puff of his cigarette and said in a deep voice, Kenneth Elmeroy, this guy is our first target. As for Castor, let someone else deal with him. This guy, he actually wants to let Castor go? This time, it was Dustless's fault. He still remembered that in the original work, the reward for killing Castor was a command seal. Such an advantage was enough to make all the mages crazy, and it was also a good opportunity to hunt other mages. But now, Wei Gong Kisi was relieved. Dustless naturally felt strange. Could it be? As if thinking of something, Dustless's eyes fell on Saber's hand. No wonder Wei Gong Kisi didn't care about the swan meat and want to deal with that stinky toad. It turned out to be the reason. Dustless glanced at Saber's left arm. Her wrist was wrapped in a white bandage. There were obvious bloodstains on the white bandage, which were very conspicuous. Lancer's noble phantasm, Yellow Rose, had a rather strange ability. It could cause irreversible damage. After being attacked by this spear, the upper limit of the HP would be reduced. Even if the user used healing magic or regeneration ability, they would only be able to recover to the injured state. The injured state would be maintained until the noble phantasm was destroyed or Lancer was eliminated. In other words, Saber's combat power was greatly reduced. Her ultimate skill, Excalibur, was also blocked by Lancer's noble phantasm. If she didn't kill Lancer, she wouldn't be able to use this ability anymore. But it's necessary to kill Lancer. I'm really sorry, Saber. Dustless walked to Saber and showed an apologetic look. Saber was stunned and asked, "You didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing? Alice Phil is my mater, and you hurt yourself to protect her. Of course, it's my responsibility." Dustless scolded himself for being careless. Back then, all he cared about was stepping on Gilgamesh. As for Alice Field, he left her to Saber as if nothing had happened. On one hand, he had to fight a strong player like Lancer. On the other hand, he had to protect Alice Phil. There was even the extremely despicable assassin who was secretly shooting him. It was normal for Saber to be injured. Don't worry about it. We were allies at that time. On the contrary, you were the one who defeated that golden archer. I should feel proud. That guy made me feel a little threatened. Saber's face revealed a delicate and gentle smile, which warmed his heart. It's best if you can participate. Wei Gong Kisi finally heaved a sigh of relief after looking at Dustless with a gloomy expression. He originally counted on Saber and Takumi Juyu to deal with Lancer together. As for Dustless, Wei Gong Kisi did not expect him to participate. For some reason, Dustless hated and even viewed him as an enemy. Therefore, in Wei Gong Kisi's plan, there was no script for Dustless to appear. Now that he was willing to take the initiative to participate in this hunt, it was for the best. Damn it, Lancer! Why didn't you join forces with that golden archer and berserker to kill the 8th heroic spirit, and those two guys, Saber? Bastard, who gave you the confidence to do that? In a luxurious apartment, Kenneth was angrily throwing a tantrum. The handsome man who was kneeling on one knee in front of him was his servant, Lancer. Facing the angry Kenneth Elmeroy, Lancer chose to remain silent. "Lord, I will definitely defeat those two guys fair and square and help you obtain the Holy Grail. Please believe me. I swear in the name of Delumudo Odina." Lancer swore with a serious face. Unfortunately, his master Kenneth did not buy it. "Let me make it clear. This is something that should be done. Do you still need to swear? Are you saying that if you don't swear, you won't help me obtain the Holy Grail? Watch your tone, Lancer." Kenneth snorted coldly. Judging from his tone, he was treating Lancer as a useless tool. Kenneth's eyes became colder and colder. If he could, he would immediately change to a heroic spirit with a more flexible mind. Lancer, this guy, was getting more and more unpleasant to the eye. He was extremely annoying. Moreover, his thoughts were too stubborn. It was fine as long as he could obtain the final victory. It did not matter even if he had to use despicable tricks. In Kenneth's eyes, the so-called chivalry spirit was just **T. You can talk about the chivalry spirit with others, but would others abide by this ridiculous rule with you? It was still a sneak attack. Lancer, I really pity you. Your master is very similar to that guy Wei Gong Kisi. He would do anything to achieve his goal. A frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Kenneth and Lancer were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the voice at the same time. Outside the window, there was actually a figure floating. "It's you." That smiling face of Wu Chen's fell into the two people's eyes and was extremely asking for a beating. After that, Kenneth and Lancer both exclaimed. Among them, Kenneth's expression was the most interesting. he said furiously. Impossible. I have set up a lot of... Stupid thing. Do you think those tricks to trick children will work on heroic spirits? No wonder an idiot like you was killed by Wagon Kesey's plot. You're so stupid. Dustless sneered loudly. He snorted at the barrier that Kenneth had set up. Chapter 1689. Dustless was not looking down on Kenneth, but he was too naive. Although a magician was powerful, there was a huge difference between a human and a hero spirit. If the difference could be easily made up, why would a hero spirit be needed in a battle? Is this fella here to provoke me? Kenneth's eyeballs moved quickly as his face turned serious. Dustless was coming at them aggressively. It seemed like they had no other choice but to fight him. Your Majesty, let me have a fight to the death with this guy. Lancer stared at Wu Chun with burning eyes. His eyes were filled with a burning desire to fight. However, Kenneth, who was hesitant, ignored him. Idiot, don't you know there's a saying that there must be something wrong if something is out of the ordinary? Or are all hero spirits so stupid? There must be a trap for him to come to us. Kenneth stared at Lancer angrily and cursed him for being stupid. No, we can't fight him. We must drag it out. This fellow must have set a trap for us since he came to us. Wouldn't we be idiots if we step on the landmine without hesitation? Kenneth shook his head decisively after pondering for more than 10 seconds. He smiled proudly as he stared at Dustless. I know what you're planning to do. Sebra was stabbed by Lancer, and she can't use her arm anymore. Her combat power will be greatly reduced. You came to us in such a hurry because you want to break the curse on Lancer's relic, right? Yo, it's a miracle. You idiot, you're smart. Dustless was actually mocking Kenneth. But you're such a despicable person. Will it work if you reject me? You're so naive that I'll think that you're a kid. You want to force me to fight? Don't even think about it. Kenneth rejected him decisively, ignoring Lancer's burning desire to fight. He was sure that Dustless came to him and there must be a trap for him. He would fall into the trap if he challenged him. It's good that we don't fight. Actually, compared to violent fights, I prefer things that men like to do. Dustless suddenly laughed sinisterly and teased. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you just now. Your fiancée, Sora Nazirii Sophia, is crying and begging you to marry her. TSK. If you refuse, then such a beautiful woman will be mine. You took Solo away? Bastard. Just when did the heroic spirits summoned by the Holy Grail War become so shameless and perverted? Damn bastard. Kenneth trembled as he pointed at Dustless. His vision turned black, and he almost passed out from anger. He stared straight at Dustless. The impact of these words was no less than being struck by lightning. As a heroic spirit, you are an out-and-out hero. You even used such a despicable and ugly method. Kenneth, who had regained his senses, was furious. He cursed Dustless in his heart for being so shameless. This bastard kept saying that he and Wei Gong Kesey were despicable, but they even kidnapped a hostage. Who could be more despicable than Dustless? TSK. This really has nothing to do with me. It was Wei Gong Kesey who did it. Dustless continued to laugh sinisterly and exerted pressure. He even showed an expression that said, "Don't blame me." He also pushed all the responsibility to Wei Gong Kesey. The so-called protagonist was actually used as a scapegoat. Master of Lancer, since you're not going to fight, then I'll retreat. She's called Sola, right? That beautiful woman is still waiting for me to spend the night with her. She's crazy about such a handsome, heroic spirit like me. Dustless showed a strange and wretched expression that all men understood. Then, he disappeared from Kenneth's sight. Plop! Kenneth, who couldn't take the blow, fainted. The moment he closed his eyes, Sola Nazirii Sophia's sobbing face suddenly appeared in his mind, as well as Dustless, who was unscrupulously abusing her. Kenneth immediately stood up and kicked Lancer in annoyance. He roared furiously. Damn it! Why are you still standing here, you idiot? Hurry up and chase after her. Do you want to see another green hat on my head? Kenneth roared in a deranged manner. He even cursed. Lancer's reaction to battle could be said to be perfect, but when it came to this kind of matter that concerned a man's dignity, he became nervous. Green hat. Lancer was stunned for a moment. Then, he came to a realization after thinking about it carefully. He promised solemnly, "My lord, don't worry. Leave Madam's safety to me. Also, you don't have to worry. Madam will definitely not be charmed by that guy. Although he's more handsome than you, I believe that with your charisma, you'll definitely capture Madam's heart." Before leaving, Lancer suddenly advised Kenneth out of kindness. However, the latter only stared at Lancer blankly. That absent-minded gaze was obviously questioning. "You and Dustless are purposely attacking me, right?" "Ka. Lancer stabbed the transparent tempered glass with his spear and looked at Dustless's disappearing figure from afar. He decisively gave chase at full speed. "You're quite fast. You've caught up in such a short time?" Dustless turned his head and stared at the black figure that was gradually closing in on him. His cheeks no longer had the frivolous look from before. Instead, it was replaced by endless coldness. "Damn that guy. Wei Gong Keisai doesn't deserve to be a magician. He even used such disgusting methods. I must personally chop him into 8 pieces to vent my anger." Kenneth clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he growled. He was really disgusted by Dustless. He pushed all the blame onto Wei Gong Keisai. Chapter 1690. Kenneth walked out of the apartment in a huff. He couldn't control the flames in his heart as he stood in the hallway. His spittle flew everywhere as he cursed Wei Gong Keisai for being despicable and shameless. He even cursed his 18 generations of ancestors. As a magician, he actually kidnapped someone else's fiancée to blackmail them. He was too shameless. What nonsense is this guy spouting? Kidnap his fiancée? Keisai, have you done such a thing before? Why didn't I know about it? In the underground parking lot, Wei Gong Keisai and Takeo Juyu were speechless as they were setting up the bombs. They had installed invisible listening devices in the entire apartment. Kenneth's cursing and scolding all fell into the ears of Wei Gong Keisai and Takeo Juyu. God knows what he's talking about, especially Wei Gong Keisai. His face was almost the color of a pig's liver. He really wanted to grab Kenneth and beat him up, then ask him when he kidnapped his fiancée. This was completely unreasonable. Don't worry about such trivial matters. Our plan seems to have been superfluous. Dustless has already forced Kenneth out. He has set up all kinds of barriers and traps in this building. We will be at a disadvantage if we fight here. Let's go to Dustless' place and work together with him to get rid of Kenneth and Lancer. Wei Gong Keisai lit a cigarette and took a leisurely puff before saying, "Let's go to Dustless' place. Kenneth is probably rushing there as well." Under the black night sky, in an abandoned warehouse, it was as terrifying as hell. Sharp screams could be heard from time to time, and blurry, ghostly shadows were reflected on the walls. Even breathing was several times more difficult than usual. "Don't kill me." Kenneth's fiancée, Sora, looked at the approaching figure in fear. Fear appeared on her delicate face. "That will depend on how you please me." The tone of boredom spread throughout the deathly silent room. Dustless sat on the chair with a lazy expression and looked at Sora, who was hiding in the corner. He realized that Lancer would still need a while to rush over. He stared at Sora's scared face and couldn't help but tease her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. A strong gravitational force erupted from his palm, and Sola's body floated over uncontrollably. "It's a long night. Don't you think you need some entertainment to pass the time?" Dustless grabbed Sola's throat and asked evilly, "As long as you don't kill me, I'll agree to any of your conditions." Sola looked at Dustless with a begging expression. "Really? That's for the best." Dustless pointed to his left and right legs. He closed his eyes and said, "Massage my legs. If I'm satisfied, you can leave here safely." "I understand." Sora nodded obediently before kneeling on the ground and massaging Dustless's legs rhythmically with her soft hands. Bang, bang, bang. Poochie, poochie, poochie. After a few loud gunshots, Sola stopped moving and fell to the ground. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sola. Her body was covered in blood and flesh. Her abdomen was also badly mutilated, and a finger-sized wound was clearly visible. A heroic spirit really knows how to enjoy life. Two silhouettes walked out from the dark corner. Looking sideways, it was Wei Gong Kisi, who was wearing black clothes, and his assistant, Takeo Jiyu. She's a scourge. Wei Gong Kisi glanced at Sola, who was unwilling to die, and said expressionlessly, "If you want to resent someone, you can only resent yourself for being Kenneth's fiancé. Do you think you can fool me with that ridiculous trick of yours?" Wei Gong Kisi. Lifting his eyelids, Dustless stared at Wei Gong Kisi's cold face and sneered. "Even if she wasn't Kenneth's fiancé, you still wouldn't let her go. For a person who was distorted by the so-called righteous companions, he wouldn't care how many people were sacrificed in order to achieve his goal. Anyway, in Wei Gong Kisi's eyes, these were necessary sacrifices." Sola. At the same time, a sorrowful cry sounded. Looking at the direction where the sound came from, it was Lancer and Kenneth. Damned Wei Gong Kisi. Sola didn't participate in this war. Why did you do this to her? Kenneth asked with red eyes, looking like a gambler who had lost everything. Don't think that I don't know. Although you have signed a contract with Lancer, the magic that sustains Lackner is provided by this woman. She can only blame herself for this. Looking at Kenneth's eyes that were filled with hatred, Wei Gong Kisi answered frankly, "Lackner, I'll leave that heroic spirit to you. Get rid of these eyesores for me." Kenneth roared crazily. Dustless left Lackner to him, and he pounced on Wei Gong Kisi. He couldn't wait to die together with him. "I will definitely complete your mission, Lord." Lancer also stared at Wu Chun in an unfriendly manner. A shocking viciousness occasionally flashed across his eyes. "Bring it on, Lancer. This is your last performance. Try your best to dance. Don't disappoint me." Dustless, who was sitting on the chair, smiled. He supported his chin with his right hand and looked at Lancer with an expectant expression. "As you wish." Lancer's gaze froze, and he stared at Dustless for a while. Then, he turned into a straight black shadow and charged over. Meanwhile, Wei Gong Kisi and Kenneth were entangled in a fight. Chapter 1691. The dense cold light was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Within a few seconds, Lancer, who was wielding his relic, had stabbed hundreds of times. Unfortunately, Dustless seemed to be omniscient, as he was able to avoid the fatal attacks every time. God is really ruthless. Dustless took the initiative to communicate with Lancer as his body floated backward. "Don't talk nonsense. Just bring it on." Lancer's eyes were as deep as the abyss as he held the crimson spear in his hand. "Nonsense? Don't you think fate is cruel? God is really cruel and heartless to let the perfect me meet you, who is full of flaws." Dustless sighed with extreme narcissism and looked at Lancer with eyes full of pity. "You're too much." Hearing this, Lancer waved the spear in his hand again. The sharp tip of the spear pounced toward Dustless's head. Elemental transformation. Dustless's body was covered in a bright golden light as he did not hesitate to use his best skill. The spear fiercely pierced through Wu Chen's head, penetrating between his eyebrows. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out of the wound. Moreover, the feeling was extremely strange. It gave people the feeling that they had hit the air. What kind of hero spirit is this guy? Lancer quickly pulled out the relic that was pierced through Dustless's head. In an instant, the wound was healed at the speed of light. It seemed like nothing had happened at all. He stared at Dustless cautiously. His bottomless eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. Nature's attraction. He grabbed the air, and a strong gravitational force exploded. An invisible force distorted the surrounding environment. Wherever the gravitational force reached, the laws of physics would lose their effect and everything would float. Lancer was the same. "Get over here." With a loud shout, the chakra in Dustless's body increased the output by a few times. Lancer, who was initially struggling, suddenly lost control of his body. "You're courting death." A ferocious look appeared on Lancer's face. He simply stopped resisting and used the inertia of gravity to lunge at Dustless. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lancer waved his spear with all his might, and the cold light scattered. It looked like Dustless's head was going to be pierced into a beehive. Lancer's idea was extremely crafty. There was no way to escape. No matter which direction he dodged in, he would be torn apart by the cold light. Dying. Lancer seemed to have seen through Dustless's miserable death and revealed a victorious smile. Bang, bang, bang. At the same time, a majestic repulsive force suddenly broke out of his body. Lancer, who was caught off guard, was also affected. His proud face instantly turned tragic. Shinra Tensei. Lancer's body was sent flying by the super-strong repulsive force. Ka. The hard wall was cracked by him, and there was even a dent in it. Lancer's mouth was stained with fresh blood. This guy can actually control gravity and repulsive force at the same time. Lancer wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was in severe pain, as if he was being pricked by needles. He had to gasp for breath just to move his body slightly. It was extremely strenuous. If an ordinary person was hit, they would have been turned into a bloody pulp. TSK, your body is very strong. His eyes moved around Lancer. The bones in this guy's body were faintly showing signs of falling apart. It could be said that it was a miracle that he could still stand up. You're still far from defeating me. After taking a breath of cold air, the pain in Lancer's body eased a little. He stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. There was no sign of discouragement on his handsome face. I really don't understand people like you. You know that the difference in strength is like heaven and earth, but you still refuse to give up in the end. A tenacious spirit, like perseverance, can't make up for the difference in strength. Dustless shook his head to express his confusion. At the same time, a blue light appeared on his fingertips. Void flash. Boom, boom, boom. The energy ball was flicked out by Dustless's finger and instantly annihilated Lancer. There was a violent explosion. Lancer did not even have the time to scream before he was eroded by the high-density energy ball. Plop! Lancer lay in the crater, his entire body charred beyond recognition. The high temperature from the void flash explosion had burned him to the point where he didn't even look like a human anymore. He was still panting, but his consciousness had already fainted. Let me give you the final blow. Looking at Lancer, who was howling in pain, a big shiny sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The light that was reflected was accompanied by a scorching attack. It could easily burn the skin of a human with just a touch. Damn trash. Lancer, this useless trash. It's fine if you can't help me at this time, but you actually want me to help you out. Useless trash. On the other side, Kenneth cursed fiercely. He did not expect Lancer to be so useless. After being beaten up by Dustless, he was coldly suppressed without even having the strength to retaliate. Get lost. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Kenneth suddenly got rid of Wei Gong Kisi and turned to Jiyu Mami, who had the weakest strength. He quickly grabbed her and subdued her in a flash. That perverted heroic spirit. If you don't want this guy to die, quickly stay away from Lancer. Kenneth shouted at Dustless. He did not want to lose, nor did he want to withdraw from this Holy Grail war in advance. If Lancer died, it would mean that everything was over. Kenneth did not want to leave in grief. Chapter 1692. Staring at Dustless with a ferocious look, Kenneth glared back with a stern expression. However, Kenneth sadly discovered that although he was angry, the consequences weren't serious at all. Dustless stepped on Lancer's body and looked at him frivolously. Miss Wumi, you should be very happy to die for justice, right? Dustless stared at the pale-faced Jiyu Wumi and sent Kenneth to hell with one sentence. Wei Gong Jishi's expression changed when he heard that. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. He remained silent. Kenneth was hit hard by Dustless's words and said angrily, "You bastard, this is your master's mistress. Can you bear the consequences of her death?" No. Shaking his finger a few times, Dustless smiled indifferently and said, "I think Miss Wumi will be very willing to sacrifice herself." Jiyu Wumi glared at Dustless and looked at him angrily. She stuttered for a moment and didn't know how to answer. If she could live, who would choose to die? Moreover, Jiyu Wumi still hoped that after Alice Phil disappeared, she would become the official mistress and live the fairy tale life of her dreams. It seems like you don't want to. Kenneth heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that. Joy appeared on his face. He was really afraid that Juyu Wumi would say something like, "I'm not afraid of death. I must kill Lancer," or something like that. "Dustless, kill Lancer." At this moment, Wei Gong Jishi ordered with a cold face. "Are you crazy? This guy is your secret lover. Are you going to ignore her life and death now?" Kenneth shouted in disbelief. He must have investigated Wei Gong Jishi's matter clearly. The secret relationship between Juyu Wumi and Wei Gong Jishi naturally couldn't escape Kenneth's eyes. Jishi, Juyu Wumi, lowered her head with a complicated expression. Her eyes were filled with crystal tears. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, an unexpected cold light attacked. Dustless was stunned. The moment he turned around, a cold light attacked his heart. Poochie, a blood-red hole appeared where Dustless's heart was. His whole body was pierced through by the cold light. If his heart was destroyed, even a heroic spirit would die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They all stared at the figure behind Dustless in unison, and an unexpected figure appeared before their eyes. It was Lancer, who was severely exhausted. "Lancer actually sneak-attacked me. Your knighthood spirit should be very valuable. You shouldn't do such a despicable thing like sneak attack." Dustless stared blankly at Lancer, who had a painful expression. "Ha ha!" At this moment, an unusually proud laugh came from Kenneth's mouth. He was beaming with joy. "You bunch of idiots. With Lancer's character, he definitely wouldn't do something like a sneak attack." However, pointing at the command incantation on his arm, Kenneth laughed and said, "But if I were to use the Lancer to pretend to be dead and attack you, everything would be different. Master, are you that despicable?" Lancer's face was filled with pain. Looking at Kenneth, who was laughing proudly, he did not hide the disgust deep in his eyes. "Shut up, you idiot. You've ruined my reputation, and now you've caused Sola's death. Do you still dare to blame me, you useless piece of trash servant? Moreover, I'll let you kill this guy. You should thank me." Kenneth laughed crazily, completely ignoring the knighthood. The masters of the Holy Grail War would not follow this idiotic and ridiculous fallacy. Swish, swish, swish. A straight ray of light cut through the dark and oppressive environment, turning into a sharp lightsaber, and went straight for Koni's, who was gloating. Poochie. This ray of light instantly pierced through his abdomen, and a hole the size of a human head appeared. His disgusting laughter also disappeared in an instant. Who did this? Ignoring the piercing pain all over his body, Kenneth looked for the initiator of the sneak attack. "Ah, the culprit is right in front of you. What are you looking at?" A lazy voice was heard. Kenneth immediately followed the voice and skimmed over. To his astonishment, it was Dustless. "You should be dead. Your wound has healed?" "Bullshit." Kenneth looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a panic. "That's impossible. I ordered Lancer to destroy your heart." "Destroying the heart will kill? That's for ordinary masters and servant. Don't forget, this guy is the 8th heroic spirit that shouldn't have appeared. His way of existence is special and unreasonable. The law that applies to ordinary people naturally doesn't apply to Dustless." Takeo Jiyu coldly glanced at Kenneth, who was stunned. She did not hide her sneer. Damn it! Sensing that his life was fading away, Kenneth was like a mad dog. When he wanted to drag Takeo Jiyu down with him, it was already too late. Bang, bang, bang. A few shots were fired consecutively. Kenneth's head was shot into blood, leaving behind a few huge holes. He and Lancer finally disappeared together forever. With Lancer's death, the curse left on Saber's arm also disappeared. "We finally got rid of Lancer. It's a success. Let's go back, Takeo Jiyu." Wei Gong Kisi showed a rare smile and took the initiative to greet Takeo Jiyu. He wanted to give her a warm hug, but who knew that this guy only nodded coldly. Although they won this war, Wei Gong Kisi also lost the people's hearts because of it. Chapter 1693. Serves you right. Glancing at the indifferent Jiyu Meimi, Dustless wasn't surprised. Wei Gong Kisi was someone who could sacrifice others for his own justice, so it was normal for him to be hated. His protagonist aura was also limited. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ignoring Juyu Mamie and Wei Gong Kisi, Dustless turned into a flash of light and disappeared from sight. Cough, cough. Mamie, I have something to say. Awkwardly coughing twice, Wei Gong Kisi revealed an apologetic expression and cleared his throat. When he was about to apologize, Juyu Mamie's words made him raise his eyebrows. Maybe the so-called justice that I insisted on before was wrong. Just like what Dustless said to Aliceville a few days ago, creating a world where there is only justice? Our dreams might be too illusory. Juyu Mamie's eyes lit up, and her light tone carried a sense of relief. People don't have to bear anything when they are alive. As long as they feel happy, it is enough. The person who can decide their own fate is often themselves. This is what Dustless said. Wei Gong Kisi was dumbfounded. Damn. Do you need to be so deceptive? How could a heroic spirit's casual words be able to turn his best friend, who had followed him for many years? This is simply too deceptive. What kind of charm does that kid have? Wei Gong Kisi's weathered face had some other emotions, jealousy. Don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. He is just a heroic spirit. What is there to listen to the words of a dead person? Mamie, don't be deceived by him. Wei Gong Kisi nervously explained. The young woman in front of him was his spiritual food. If Juyu Mamie betrayed him, just thinking about the consequences made Wei Gong Kisi break out in cold sweat. Ever since Dustless, this jinx, appeared, his former best friend, even his servant, became unreliable. Dongmu City, Ahrensburg family's villa? What should I eat tonight? In the brightly lit, luxurious villa, Dustless was rushing to the dining hall. After the big battle, his stomach was grumbling in protest. Saber, is it just you? Where's my master, Aliceville? After stepping into the restaurant, Dustless looked around and found that Saber was the only one who hungrily devoured the dazzling array of food. She was so fast that it was shocking. It was hard to imagine that such a petite girl would have an even more terrifying appetite than a burly man who had been starving for more than 10 days. It seems to be in another room. The people from the church have rushed over. It seems that they have a mission for Aliceville. Sabra's mouth was covered in grease, and she blushed when she realized that she had lost her composure. A notice from the church? Hearing that, Dustless frowned and asked if it's the church, they can use Familiar Demon to go there. Why do they come here? I can only ask Aliceville about the specifics. I don't know what they're talking about. But before that, I want to thank you. Sabra walked in front of Dustless and smiled sincerely. Then, she bowed solemnly. The curse on my arm has disappeared. You killed Lancer, right? No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. We don't owe each other anything from now on. Dustless didn't mind. He had a good impression of Saber. Besides, Saber was injured because of his own carelessness. At the same time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Looking up, a flawless face and straight white hair invaded his eyes first. Looking closely, it was Aliceville. The Church of Holy Light wants us to stop the Holy Grail War immediately and kill Satyr temporarily, Aliceville said happily. After completing the mission, we'll receive a command charm. What's going to happen can't be stopped. Dustless sighed. Then, he asked curiously, I heard that the person who came to inform us is someone from the church. Is it Yin Feng Qi? In the previous battle, his assassin was killed. I remember that he applied for the church's protection. It's not Yin Feng Qi, but the person who came to inform us is related to him. Aliceville shook her head and gave an unexpected answer. It's his father, Yin Feng Qi. I heard from Satyr that he's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Saber nodded slightly and didn't suspect anything. Then, she explained, since it was sent in the name of the church, there shouldn't be any shady dealings behind this mission. I guess all the masters will participate. Even if they can't get the command charm, they don't want the enemy to get it. Supervisor? Are you talking about that old man? Yin Feng Qi? In fact, he's already in cahoots with Tashiomi Nagasaka. Dustless curled his lips and said disdainfully, that old man is in cahoots with Tashiomi Nagasaka. As for the supervisor, it's even more ridiculous. Yin Feng Qi, the son of Yin Feng Qi, is participating in this Holy Grail war. All fairness has become unfairness. Also, Dustless's face fell. He sneered in his heart. That old man has a bunch of command charms. He can give them to whoever he wants. He's a big problem. I might as well kill him. Since the word fairness had lost its meaning, then the supervisor, Yin Feng Chi Li, had also lost its meaning. In the dead of night, Dustless's clone secretly snuck into the church and secretly killed off Yin Feng Chi Li. Yin Feng Chi Li was present during this, but he couldn't do anything against Dustless. He could only watch helplessly. Chapter 1694. Bang, bang, bang. There were a few crisp sounds coming from Toshiomi Inosaka's house. Toshiomi Inosaka lost his usual calmness. His face was ferocious, and he even smashed some delicate porcelain in anger. Looking at the fragments all over the ground, even so, the raging flames in Toshiomi Inosaka's eyes were still burning. He still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Yin Fengli was dead. This sudden news hit Toshiomi Inosaka a lot. Yin Fengli was one of his important allies. With a special relationship with the church, he could also cheat, but now. In short, Toshiomi Inosaka was very angry now. Master, an old-fashioned, emotionless voice invaded his ears. Toshiomi Inosaka immediately changed his face. As a noble magician, it was necessary to pay attention to elegance at all times. Kaylee, I am deeply saddened by the death of your father. Toshiomi Inosaka showed a painful and sad look. After all, it was his important ally. It was normal to be sad when he died. But Toshiomi Inosaka continued. I hope you can continue to maintain the relationship between the church and the Inosaka family, so that it will be good for both of us. I will, Master. Yin Fengli still nodded with no expression. In fact, he didn't have any sadness or tears for Yin Fengli's death. Not even a trace of tears. As for the reason, Yin Fengli didn't know. One day later. What? You ordered us to kill Castor. In the villa of the Ahrensburg family, Dustless stared at Kimiko Kissy and Alice Phil. His head was buzzing. He had already killed Yin Feng and Li Zheng, so this boring mission should be over. Is there anything wrong? Kimiko Kissy looked at Dustless's eyes and asked faintly. Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this. He thought to himself, it seems that the people of the church have sealed off the death of Yin Feng Rijing. It should be Toshimi and Yin Feng Kaylee who did it. These two guys are really shameless. They actually want to get something for nothing. Since Yin Feng Rijing was dead, the quest reward of killing Satyr and obtaining a command seal was obviously not going to be fulfilled. However, Toshiomi Inaka and Yin Feng Rijing were still trying to trick everyone into fighting Satyr. What else could it be other than trying to gain something without risking anything? Not only that, the overseer of the Holy Grail War had been killed. This meant that all the illegal activities in the past had become legal. All sorts of crazy methods could be used. Anyway, this time, it's going to be a luxurious hunting feast. Dustless and Saber are responsible for dealing with Castor, and I'll secretly snipe the other masters. Wei Gong Kissy's eyes lit up. Since the masters chose to stop the Holy Grail War and temporarily kill Castor, then this mission must gather all the masters. Wei Gong Kissy could also hide in the dark and kill them one by one. Despicable. Saber snorted with dissatisfaction. She was very unhappy with Wei Gong Kissy's behavior. Wu Mi, come with me to prepare. Wei Gong Kissy completely ignored Saber's complaint and left. Dustless, you also need to prepare a little. Even if we can't get the command seal, we can't let it fall into the hands of others. Looking at Dustless's lazy eyes, Alice Field solemnly reminded him that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War and killed innocent people. This is entirely for his own selfish reasons. His master is also not a good person. Saber, who had a strong sense of justice, hated Castor deeply. She couldn't wait to get rid of him. Not only Castor, but his master is also a pervert. Not only is he not a good person, but that guy also discussed the fun of killing with Castor. Dustless rolled his eyes and said, the combination of Yu Shenglong Jijia and Castor was definitely the most perverted kind. That Dustless, actually, I have a very puzzling question to ask you. Alice Field stared at Dustless suspiciously and said the doubts in her heart. Sarvant's existence needs its master to provide mana. Why do you? Why don't you need me to provide mana? Dustless stared at Alice Field. He really didn't know how to answer this question. That's because my own mana is extremely large. I don't need the master to provide mana. After being silent for a long time, Dustless made up a somewhat reasonable reason. He was not a real heroic spirit, and he didn't need any mana to fight. The command seal on Alice Field's wrist was just for show. It was wishful thinking to control him. The situation is indeed like what Dustless said. Even if Satyr suddenly dies, as long as the heroic spirit's own mana storage is high, it is not difficult to maintain the body. Saber stepped forward to help. She stared at Dustless in disbelief and exclaimed, "You should have consumed a lot of mana in the previous battle. Yet, you can still maintain your physical form without being affected. How ridiculous is your mana storage?" "That's not the point." Dustless looked at Saber's admiring face and coughed twice embarrassedly. How could he maintain the body forever? It had nothing to do with the mana, because Dustless himself was not dead. Naturally, he could maintain the body indefinitely. As for the huge amount of mana that Saber said, Dustless didn't even have a trace. Chapter 1695. It was a stinky underground sewer. There was dirty black mud everywhere. The smell was disgusting. It was similar to the rotten smell of animal corpses, and the gloomy environment was like the legendary underworld. Boom, boom, boom. The ground trembled, and many cracks appeared on the solid floor. A huge hole appeared, and the bright sunlight shone in. Those two guys really know how to choose the place. There was a sound wave in the quiet atmosphere, followed by Saber's light voice. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about how they survived here. Dustless touched his chin and looked curious. He sniffed slightly. The rotten smell made it difficult to breathe. That makes sense. Saber nodded. Castor and his master could survive in such a harsh environment. Castor and his master were amazing. But Dustless's right eye changed, and a mysterious blue and white eye appeared. He could see through the boundless darkness, and the scene in the distance could be seen at a glance. According to Sesse's information, this seems to be the location of Castor's magic workshop. There should be a big harvest. Saber said with an expectant tone. There is a big harvest, but the result may be the opposite of what you think. Dustless looked at Saber with a deep look, then he shouted, "Fire release! Great fireball technique!" Boom, boom, boom. The huge fireball rushed out, and the originally dark and strange environment was instantly lit up, and the shocking scene was also reflected in Saber's eyes. Damn it, how can he do this kind of thing? Castor, that bastard, why didn't his master restrain that crazy guy? Saber clenched her fist and cursed. Her voice was trembling. Looking around, there were countless children's corpses. You let Castor's master restrain him? Saber, with all due respect, Yusheng Long Jiji's level of perversion is no worse than Castor's. They are very close, just like lovers. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew that both of them were perverted murderers. Ouch! A hoarse roar suddenly rang out, accompanied by a violent tremor. In that instant, the entire Dongmu city trembled slightly. Even though the fluctuations were minuscule, Dustless still managed to catch them. "Follow me. Castor is on the sea." Dustless flashed and appeared in front of Saber in the next second. Ignoring her shocked expression, he grabbed her slender waist and leaped into the air. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Saber regained her senses, she found herself in the sky with Dustless. Saber, who was being hugged by Dustless, blushed slightly. Her body temperature was rising rapidly, and her cheeks were burning hot. She clutched the corner of her shirt tightly, looking as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She looked extremely nervous and awkward. "This is the first time I've been carried in the air by someone. It feels pretty good." Saber lowered his head and looked at the entire Dongmu city. The boundless city was in his eyes, and the light gathered into a large area. The scenery was so beautiful that he felt a little infatuated. By the way, which era are you from? Dustless. And your name is very strange. It seems that there is no hero that matches your identity. In addition, there is another important question. Saber stared at the face in front of her seriously and said, "Some of your abilities don't seem to belong to a hero. No matter what kind of heroic spirit it was, there was one thing that could be confirmed. He had once appeared in the track of history. As for Wu Chun, it was as if he had appeared out of thin air. There was no information to be found, not even the most basic clues. Which era are you from? Actually, I don't know myself." Dustless gave a ridiculous answer, which made Saber roll her eyes. "I'm telling the truth." Dustless smiled bitterly. After all, he came from another dimension. Only God knew how many years ago he came from. Ow, ow. Dustless flew farther and farther, gradually approaching the answer. Purple light surged on the surface of the sea, and the beast's roar was getting closer. In a trance, he could see an extremely exaggerated black shadow. "I never expected the two of us to be the last to arrive. Even the Hero King is so diligent." After passing through the layers of light, Dustless and Saber landed at the harbor. They looked at the super monster and frowned at the same time. You sure know how to put on airs. The two of you are the slowest." An unruly voice sounded from the sky. Dustless and Saber looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. They did not need to look to know that the owner of the voice was the problematic child, Gilgamesh. Lancer doesn't seem to be here. The Conqueror King, Iskandar, rode on the divine might wheel. Although it was not as dazzling as Gilgamesh, it looked quite domineering on the surface. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Looking up in the sky, there was an aircraft with a golden hull inlaid with unknown emeralds flying in the sky. The person who was operating it was the arrogant Hero King, Gilgamesh. Lancer and his master were killed. Naturally, they won't come. Gilgamesh said indifferently. There was no fluctuation in his tone, as if he was talking about insects. This upstart's temperament hasn't changed. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Everyone received the order to eliminate Castor. Whoever killed Castor first would be the winner and could get a command seal from the church. However, according to Dustless's guess, this must be a lie. Yen Fengli was already dead. Ow, ow. The giant sea monster screamed crazily. It exposed its saw-like teeth and its countless tentacles that flapped its wings and tried to attack Gilgamesh in the sky. However, the distance was too high, and the sea monster couldn't attack Gilgamesh. "Bastard, you want to touch the glory of this king? Go to hell and repent." The void behind Gilgamesh rippled, and countless divine weapons flashed. When they were about to attack the sea monster summoned by Castor, there was a sudden change. Ow, ow! An even more ferocious voice suddenly sounded. A monster wearing black armor and a helmet with red light flashed. He was standing on a fighter jet and had launched 2 missiles while Gilgamesh and the sea demon were fighting. Boom, boom, boom. The aircraft driven by Gilgamesh suffered heavy damage and splashed a huge fireball, which was particularly spectacular. TSK, TSK. Why did the Hero King do this? Dustless shook his head when he saw it. He clearly saw that Gilgamesh fell into the black, stinky sea. He was afraid that this guy's lungs were about to explode. Chapter 1696. Woo, woo, woo. The monster's gigantic mouth emitted a hiss as it spewed out a viscous liquid that resembled ink. The unlucky Hero King had just crawled out of the water when he was attacked by the mysterious ink. His body stank as it emanated a nauseating stench. Oh, it's really embarrassing. Is it appropriate for the ancient king to fall into such a miserable state? Dustless laughed. Archer, if you can't beat Castor and Berserker, you can kowtow and beg me. Beg me. Hearing Dustless's harsh laughter, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately glared at him and gnashed his teeth. He couldn't wait to swallow Dustless alive. Boom. Suddenly, the disgusting sea monster waved its tentacles and attacked Dustless and others. At the same time, they could hear, Gene d'Arc, Gene d'Arc. Damn God. Needless to say, The culprit must be Castor, that perverted monster. Overconfident, and I repeat for the last time, I am not the Jean d'Arc you said. Saber snorted, holding her sword with both hands. Excalibur shot out a huge golden light, and a huge slash emerged. Whoosh! The incoming tentacles collapsed in an instant, destroyed by the huge light. The tentacles that were dancing wildly also stopped. At first glance, everything had returned to its original tranquility. It doesn't seem to be anything special. Saber was full of confidence. Gulp. However, the good times didn't last long. The tentacles that were cut off grew new tentacles again, and they were thicker and bigger than before. This is... Saber frowned slightly, and when she was about to attack with her sword, Dustless stopped her. This is the sea monster summoned by Castor's noble phantasm. The only way to break it is to use a decisive force to defeat it. Otherwise, this sea monster can regenerate infinitely. Infinite regeneration? Saber frowned when she heard this. Castor was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. Infinite regeneration. This was the first time she encountered such a tricky ability. Oh, golden glitter. As long as you use EA, you can crush this monster. That command seal is also your master, Inaka Tashamori's. Dustless said with a smile. What's wrong with this guy's eyes? Gilgamesh met Dustless's gaze and felt displeased in his heart. He had a feeling that all his secrets had been seen through and seen through. He was fuming with anger. How can this king's supreme artifact be used to deal with this kind of garbage? Don't joke, I won't take back what I threw. Hero King Gilgamesh looked arrogant, and he disdained to attack Castor. It's just a bunch of toys. If you throw them away, so be it. Why do you care? Dustless asked calmly. At the same time, a large amount of light swept out from behind him. The golden halo covered the entire sky, and thousands of divine weapons stood out. Gulp! The heroic spirits and the masters were all shocked, looking at the light above Dustless's head. Looking closely, there were more than thousands of noble artifacts. That damned imposter! Seeing this, Hero King Gilgamesh wanted to cry. He found that the way others looked at him had changed, as if the ability of Gate of Babylon was stolen by him from Dustless. If this guy really has the same ability as me, then he can definitely use that. Gilgamesh's old face was incomparably gloomy. His own unique move had been played by someone else so skillfully. He felt particularly uncomfortable in his heart. However, the next scene also confirmed Gilgamesh's conjecture. Buzz, suddenly, a dazzling light swept out of the void, and a strange spiral sword slowly floated out of it. At the moment when the big sword flashed, the void was filled with an indescribable, ominous feeling. Even Dustless had not made a move. The sky had already broken. Is this your real noble artifact? Dustless. Saber stared at the ominous blade, and she also felt an unprecedented destructive power and a huge sense of oppression. This strange sword was even more powerful than her Excalibur. Noble artifact? Kind of. The star of creation, Immerse, has the ability to break the world. Staring at the huge sea monster in the distance, its horrible shadow flashed and kept coming to the shore, intending to destroy the entire Dongmu city. Castor, you and Joan of Arc will meet again in the next life. Glancing at the sea monster, Dustless indifferently waved a huge light. Annihilate him, yay! Boom! The huge slash whistled out, and in an instant, the vast sea was split open, and the slash rushed straight to Satyr. Whoosh! The sharp slash made a horrifying sound as it tore through the air, causing people to feel dizzy. Even the ordinary people who rushed over after hearing the sound were unable to withstand the powerful pressure and had their eardrums shattered. Damn, it's so strong. Castor, who was hiding in the huge sea monster, looked at the light of destruction, and his back was cold, and he quickly controlled countless tentacles to block it. Poochie. However, the dying struggle was useless. The tentacles were crushed by the strong hurricane and turned into a drizzle, powerlessly sprinkling on the sea. Boom! The dazzling slash finally pierced through Satyr, destroying it in one move. Its huge body instantly exploded. Chapter 1697. Boom, boom, boom. Castor's huge body exploded. It was spectacular. The whole sky was occupied by the fragmented body fragments, slowly falling. It was no different from a fine drizzle. It's that simple. Sarvant, who recovered from the shock, looked at the duo of Dustless and Saber with a speechless face. Of course, the main focus of their attention was still the calm Dustless, especially when the hero king was Gilgamesh. When this fellow saw Dustless take out an EA that was identical to his eyeballs nearly popped out. Hey, Golden Glitter Archer over there, I have something to ask you. Conqueror King Iskandar drove the Wheel of Divine Power to land next to Hero King Gilgamesh and asked, "How did you steal that guy's ability? You bastard, get away from this king." Gilgamesh was about to explode when he heard that. Gate of Babylon was his unique ability. Now, Dustless could use it inexplicably. Not only that, but he, the real one, was also treated as a fake. In fact, it was not only Ryder who thought so. The rest of the Masters and Sarvant had the same idea. When Golden Glitter used Gate of Babylon for the first time, it was destroyed by Berserker, but now Dustless showed the true strength of Gate of Babylon. It was no wonder that everyone was daydreaming. Well, I will find a chance to let you witness the gap between a fake and a real one. Hero King Gilgamesh snorted angrily and left. He was very angry with today's battle. In Osaka's mansion, Kiri, our plan needs to be modified. The 8th hero is very strong. I used to think that Gilgamesh was the strongest, but now it seems that I was wrong. In Osaka, Tashimi's face was full of decadence, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. Yes, judging from the battle just now, Gilgamesh may not be his match. Yin Fengqi Li maintained his composure. But only this time, he looked at Inosaka Tashimi's eyes. There was a strange light, like a hungry beast. No one knew what he was thinking. "Kiri, I have something for you, Pucci." Suddenly, Yin Fengqi Li attacked. He didn't give Tashimi a chance to finish his words. He used a dagger to end Tashimi's life. There was a visible bloody hole in his heart. Pucci, as if afraid that Tashimi Nagasaka's death wasn't complete enough, Yin Fengili gave him another stab. "WY, I treated you so well, and I even wanted to avenge your father. Tell me everything you want to know. Why are you so vicious?" Tashiomi and Naka's lips trembled as he asked, "Avenge my father?" Yin Fengqi Li followed and then said expressionlessly, "As expected, Master, you don't understand me. My only regret is that I didn't kill my father with my own hands. Archer and I will finish the mission you didn't finish," Yin Fengqi Li said coldly and turned to leave. However, he did not see that in the dark room, a pair of bright eyes were watching this scene in a daze. "So that's how it is, Gilgamesh. That bastard betrayed me." Tashimi Nagasaka was unwilling to cry, but Yin Fengqi Li turned a deaf ear and left with no expression. Tashimi Nagasaka didn't have much time. "We seem to be late." Outside Tashimi Nagasaka's house, Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil looked at the gloomy building. Saber and Alice Phil's delicate eyes wrinkled. They looked at each other and could see the confusion in each other's eyes. "The reward for defeating Castor is to find the church. Why do you come to Tashimi Nagasaka's house now?" Alice Phil was full of questions. Yin Fengqi Li is dead, and his son Yin Fengqi Li is colluding with Tashimi Nagasaka. What's wrong with the son's death? Dustless asked flatly. It seems that no one is here. Alice Phil pressed the doorbell, but no one responded for a long time. "I smell blood." After a long silence, Saber suddenly interrupted and said, "It seems that someone is dead here. Could it be?" Dustless heard the words and kicked open the door of Tashimi Nagasaka's house. According to his vague memory, he searched for the trace of Tashimi Nagasaka. Soon, the three of them passed through the tunnels and walked to an old door. Oh, just when they were about to open the door, an unexpected sobbing sound was the first to enter their ears. "Let's go in." Dustless and Saber looked at each other. Saber opened the door, and Dustless blocked in front of Alice Phil to prevent any accidents. Pucci. Saber pulled out the sword of Excalibur and easily broke the door. She thought she would meet Servant of Tashimi Nagasaka, but when she saw the blood-red figure, she was stunned. Sure enough, Yin Feng Kiri still killed Tashimi Nagasaka and is still in cahoots with Archer. Are the two of them really that compatible? Dustless whispered to himself, and then glanced at Tashimi Nagasaka's body. No, he was still barely breathing, and his heart and another knife wound were temporarily bandaged, but he was not far from death. Akui Nagasaka and Rin Nagasaka? He glanced at the two of them in surprise. Apparently, they helped Tashimi Nagasaka temporarily treat his wound. Strange, I remember that they left Dongmu City. Dustless whispered secretly. His mouth squirmed, and when he was about to speak, Tashimi Nagasaka's old and desperate voice sounded first. Chapter 1698. I'm sorry, Miss Alice Field. It was rude of me to let you see me in such a sorry state. Tashimi Dosaka's tone was very subtle. Due to the distance, Alice Field could not hear his words clearly. She did not understand what he meant. Master Enosaka, please speak your mind. Alice Field took a few bold steps forward, taking the initiative to approach the dying Tashiomi Enosaka. Dustless and Saber were both here, so she did not have to be afraid of Tashiomi Enosaka's schemes. I would like to entrust the mother and daughter to the care of the Einsbaron family. Tashiomi Enosaka glanced at Kue Enosaka and the teary-eyed Rin Enosaka. He lowered his head in shame, then put on an apologetic expression and blamed himself. Now that things have come to this, I won't blame anyone. I can only blame myself for being blind. It's fine if I die, but I don't want to implicate Kue and Rin. You just realized that you were blind? Wu Chun snorted when he heard that. His face was full of ridicule and disdain. This guy was too self-righteous. He thought that he controlled the master who had calculated everything. That was why he was killed by himself in the end. Watch your tone. I won't allow you to look down on my father. A girl with a ponytail and emerald eyes suddenly appeared in front of Dustless. Her angry eyes locked onto him, and she shook her fist threateningly. She looked like she would beat him up if he dared to talk nonsense again. This little girl, seeing this, Dustless could only roll his eyes. If it was any other heroic spirit who provoked him, he could have beaten them up to vent his anger. But if it was a little girl who was not even 10 years old, Rin, shut up. He's right. I was too complacent in this Holy Grail war, so much so that I neglected the dangerous people around me. Tashiomi Enosaka waved his hand with the last of his strength, then looked at Alice Field with hopeful eyes. The Enosaka family will withdraw from this Holy Grail war. I hope that you can take care of the mother and daughter for me. Alice Field hesitated for a moment when she heard this. Looking at Tashimi's pleading eyes, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. In the end, she gritted her teeth and said, "All right, I agree to your choice. If that's the case, then I can die in peace." Hearing this, Tashiomi Enosaka smiled and left the mortal world. In the end, he closed his turbid eyes in satisfaction. What a farce! However, Tashiomi Enosaka still has some conscience. At least he's better than the scum who used his wife as bait. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He vaguely understood Tashiomi Inaka's intentions, and his impression of him changed slightly. Nothing was absolute. It was one thing if Yin Feng Chili killed Tashimi, but what if he attacked Rin and Kue Tashimi as well? It wasn't impossible. Yin Feng Chili was a temperamental person. No one knew what he would do. It was normal for Tashimi to leave his family in Alice's care. He could use this opportunity to protect Sang. Moreover, the Tashimi family had already withdrawn from this Holy Grail war. They were no longer a threat to the Ahrensburg family. We won't be able to get the command seal. Yin Feng Chili probably took all. Let's go back. After a few hours, Dustless and the others finally left the Tashimi family. During this time, they held a funeral for Tashimi. Alice Phil also took the initiative to comfort Rin and Kue Tashimi. The orphan and widow were quite pitiful. On a bustling street, the car dustless, and the others were stopped in front of a supermarket. Alice Phil said that she wanted to help Rin and Koei Tashimi buy some basic necessities. Women sure have a lot of things to do. They're always like this. Sitting in the car, Dustless's casual words attracted 3 hostile gazes. He turned around and saw that it was Saber, Rin, and Koei Tashimi. Cough, cough, cough. That was a slip of the tongue. After Wu Chun cursed his bad luck, he immediately apologized. They were living under the same roof. He could offend a strong man, but he definitely couldn't offend a woman. You guys wait here. I'll go see why Aliceville is so slow. Seriously, it's just buying some necessities. Does she need to take so long? Dustless complained as he got out of the car. Just as he was about to close the door, an unexpected figure grabbed him. A strong man with red skin reached out and grabbed Dustless's shoulder. His rough face was filled with a bold smile. He waved a huge wine barrel in his other hand and laughed. Isn't this the 8th heroic spirit? Let's drink together tonight. I even invited that guy Gold Sparkle. A banquet between kings isn't something that can be casually attended. Do you want to come? This person was Ryder, the Conqueror King Iskandar. His master was Weber Velvet. However, Dustless only glanced at him in boredom and said dispiritedly, "Sorry, I'm just a normal person. I'm not interested in the banquet of kings." Hey, don't reject me so coldly. Even if you're not interested, I remember that your ally Saber is a famous Night King. She should be interested in this kind of thing. Ryder didn't care about Dustless and looked at Saber in the car. Night King, what do you think? Don't you want to discuss the path of kings with other kings? Ryder asked expectantly as he got into the car with his rough face. Sorry, Conqueror King. My attitude towards this kind of thing is the same as Dustless. Saber also shook her head and refused to participate in the banquet of kings. Chapter 1699. Oh, this is really giving me a headache. Seeing that Dustless and Saber were not interested, Ryder could not help but sigh in disappointment. He lowered his head, looking rather disappointed and depressed. Hurry up, Ryder. Don't think that everyone is as bored as you. The thin figure behind the broad figure urged impatiently, staring at Dustless fearfully. Ryder's master, Wilbur Velvet, felt a lingering fear as he looked at those dark pupils. The 3 heroic spirits that had died so far were all killed by Dustless. Wilbur Velvet had even secretly given Dustless the nickname Heroic Spirit Killer. Sorry for the long wait. It took a while. Alice Field rushed out of the supermarket with an apologetic smile on her face. When I saw the dazzling products, I was a little... Ryder, are you here to declare war? Seeing Ryder and his master, Alice Field frowned in doubt. I was thinking too much. I'll take my leave. Ryder gave Alice Field and Dustless a reassuring look, then left with his master out of extreme boredom. That's strange. After returning to the car, Dustless stared at Ryder's back that had not yet disappeared, muttering suspiciously. Is there something wrong? I don't think Ryder and his master have any intention of attacking us, and Ryder doesn't look like a heroic spirit that would attack others. Saber, who was in charge of driving, replied. She had done a lot of research on Ryder's personality. That's not what I meant. Dustless shook his head, then explained softly, what I meant was, it's strange that Ryder gave up so easily. In my impression, Ryder would definitely pester us to participate in the king's feast. But I'm curious that you rejected it. You and I are different. You were once the king of ancient Britain. Your identity is very suitable to participate. Saber's eyes flashed with a complicated sense of desolation, but she did not explain further. In the blink of an eye, it was nighttime. Ha ha! Bold laughter resounded through the sky. Looking at the rough man in front of him, Wu Chun sighed. Sure enough, he fixed his eyes and saw that this guy was Ryder. Well, I'm really sorry. Wilbur Velvet hurriedly bowed and apologized. He had tried his best to stop Ryder, but the guy was determined and insisted on drinking with Dustless and Saber. Ryder, you bastard, Saber frowned as she stared at the big guy in front of her and warned, your actions can be seen as an invasion. We can forcibly expel you. Hee, since I'm here, you won't be able to chase me away, right? As the saying goes, those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes. At this moment, Ryder placed the wine barrel on the ground and said with a look of indifference, "As the Night King, you shouldn't be so petty. Forget it. Sit down." Dustless shook his head helplessly and gestured for the two to sit down. At the same time, he glanced at the dark corner on the left. "Hero King, are you a street rat? Hiding at home every time? Are you afraid of dying in the light?" Dustless's sudden sarcasm stunned Saber and Ryder. They looked at the east corner at the same time. A golden light flashed and a man in golden armor appeared. "Your eloquence is stronger than your strength." The arrogant archer Hero King appeared and said proudly, "The protagonist is usually the last to appear. This is common sense. The minions that come out early are the first to die. So in this war, this king is destined to have the last laugh." "Archer, Lunatic's personality hasn't changed at all. Do you still think you can get the Holy Grail?" "To be honest, I'm already a little desperate." Taking a glance at Dustless, Ryder sighed and immediately poured himself a glass of wine. At the same time, he also handed a glass of wine to Dustless and Saber. Compared to the arrogant archer Hero King, Ryder knew his strength better. Bastard, pay attention to your words." The Hero King archer swept an unfriendly glance at Ryder and immediately stared at Dustless and Saber with his torch-like eyes. He announced loudly, "It's not about obtaining the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail was originally this king's. It's just returning it to its rightful owner. Another thought is that this king wants to teach thieves like you who attempted to steal my treasures a lesson." This guy's head must have been crushed by a door. Dustless scanned the Hero King archer with a look of pity. Immediately, he began drinking to drown his sorrows. After all, they were all kings. He did not have such a status, so it was inappropriate for him to interrupt. He just needed to stay out of it. "Archer, the next time you talk big, you'd better build an iron tongue." Saber mocked the Hero King coldly. This guy didn't even blush when he lied. It was obvious that he was an expert. "Iron tongue?" Hearing this, Archer frowned and pursed his lips. Then he asked in puzzlement, "This king's tongue isn't wrong. Why do I need an iron tongue? You don't even know this?" Dustless exposed him with a smile. "The next time you talk big, you won't sprain your tongue. After all, it's made of iron." With that said, everyone roared with laughter, ignoring the livid Hero King. Chapter 1700. When the Hero King heard the duo's mockery, his nose nearly went crooked from anger. As everyone knew, he had a bad temper to begin with. He never knew what it meant to endure humiliation. He had always believed that the heavens were number one, and he was number two. No, he had always believed that the heavens were number two, and that he was number one. Now that he was being humiliated and ridiculed in public by Dustless, he gritted his teeth in anger as his facial expression twitched. Unlucky, the Hero King cursed silently as he picked up the wine barrel and began drinking. Gulp, gulp. Who knew that the Hero King would spit it all out after taking 2 mouthfuls? He cursed at Ryder. Preposterous. Giving the king such trashy wine to drink is blasphemy. Trashy? Blasphemy? Ryder was secretly rendered speechless as he retorted, "This is already the best wine on the market. A bastard who has never seen the world. I knew you would say that." The Hero King curled his lips in disdain and immediately threw an exquisite golden wine cup to Dustless and company. This king had once collected some of the treasures on the ground. "The best things in the world are all mine. Wine is no exception. Don't you have such an ability as well?" Saber leaned close to Dustless's ear and whispered into it. She said strangely, "This fellow can't be your biological brother, right? Both of you have the same ability, huh?" Dustless's drunkenness disappeared from Saber's question. He looked at Golden Twinkle, who had an explosive expression and was rendered speechless. "If he was my biological brother, I would have long been killed." According to Archer's personality, what you say makes sense." Saber, who was taken aback, nodded resolutely. "Phew, that feels great." After Ryder finished drinking, he used his hazy drunkenness to say loudly, "After obtaining the Holy Grail, my wish is to be reborn and conquer this world again. I want his Kondar's name to spread to every corner of the world. If that's the case, then the Holy Grail is destined to pass you by, Conquest King. Swirling the red liquid in the wine cup, Dustless explained, your name is already spread throughout the world. No, that's history. I want to rule the world again. Ryder shook his head like a rattle drum. By the way, Dustless, what's your wish? Saber blinked her eyes and asked with a hint of anticipation in her tone. Saber wasn't the only one who was curious. Even the Conquest King and Hero King had put down the alcohol they had brought to their mouths. Their eyes circled around Dustless. My wish... Dustless thought for a moment, and to his dismay, he realized that he did not have a single decent wish at the moment. Even if he had a wish, it would be impossible for him to fulfill it with the power of the Holy Grail. I don't have any wishes. After a while, Dustless gave an answer that left everyone speechless. I don't have any wishes either. Chapter 17:01. Walk your own path. Let others talk about it. Upon hearing Dustless's words, the Hero King and Conquest King simultaneously figured out the meaning behind it. They nodded in unison as their eyes emitted a bright glow. Be it a king or a commoner, all they needed to do was follow their hearts. There was no right or wrong. Everything could be decided according to their will. I never expected this inferior impostor to have such a different view of things. Shaking the golden cup in his hand, the Hero King did not hesitate to pour the scarlet liquid into his mouth. That makes sense. There is no right or wrong in this world to begin with. At the end of the day, everyone just has different standpoints. Nodding his head, the Conquest King also accepted Dustless's explanation. Immediately, he sighed and said, the onlooker sees things clearly. Perhaps it's precisely because you aren't a king that you can see things more clearly and feel more at ease. What a great wise man. Dustless did not reply when he heard that. He stood up and stretched his back. After loosening his muscles, he said, I can't be considered wise. At the end of the day, it's just that I've lived a little longer than all of you. I'm a little tired. I'll head back to wash up and sleep. Goodbye. Just as his voice faded, Dustless did not give them a chance to react. His body gradually lost its texture as it transformed into streams of light that filled the sky like countless fireflies. In an instant, he vanished from the trio's eyes. What an unfathomable fellow. The Hero King and Conquest King were dumbfounded. After carefully sensing the situation, they shook their heads. Despite not having any magic power and having a combat strength close to 5, he was surprisingly powerful. He had beaten all the heroic spirits to a pulp. Currently, all the heroic spirits that had been killed were all Dustless's doing. Thank you, Dustless. Saber's eyes were filled with gratitude as she swept a glance in the direction where Dustless had disappeared. She had been dealt quite a blow by the Hero King and Conquest King, who echoed each other to the point of hesitation. If not for Dustless lending a helping hand at the critical moment, Saber would have found the confidence to stand on her feet despite it being an insignificant sentence. A bunch of kids who haven't grown up yet. How dare you talk about the ridiculous way of the king in front of me? Should I say that you guys are naive or ignorant? In the brightly lit corridor, even in the dead of night, it was still shining brightly. The corridor was filled with straight murals, giving it an indescribable elegance. In any case, a rich family like Einsbellen didn't lack money. Using a popular saying, I'm a fool with a lot of money. Creak. Just as Dustless pushed open the door of his room and was about to turn on the lights to take a shower, he strangely found that all the chandeliers in the room were on. Not only that, when he walked into the bedroom, he saw 2 figures on his bedding. Dustless was immediately dumbfounded. The 2 uninvited guests in the room were not the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was that these 2 figures were not wearing any clothes. Their exquisite and flawless skin was completely exposed to Dustless's sight. Get lost, pervert. The atmosphere was tense for a few seconds before a few pillows were thrown at him. Upon closer inspection, the 2 figures were actually Rin in Osaka and Kue in Osaka. Wait. With a flick of his finger, Ryatsu shredded all the pillows. After taking a closer look at the furnishings in the room, Dustless confirmed that he didn't walk into the wrong room. He shouted angrily, "This is my room without a doubt. The two of you are sleeping in my room without a doubt. There's no doubt that the two of you are the intruders. How did I become the pervert? Don't you get it? This castle doesn't have any extra rooms for us to use, so your room is being used. Emir Einherjar should feel honored." Rin Inosaka and her mother hid under the bedding with red faces. Huh. Dustless was speechless as he looked at the arrogant Rin Tasaka. This bullshit explanation was too far-fetched. The Ahrensburg family was a nouveau riche. The castle was as big as a few football fields. How could there not be a few rooms for people to sleep in? I'm really sorry, Mr. Einherjar. It was Miss Aliceville who arranged for Rin and me to stay here. If you're dissatisfied, Rin and I can leave. The gentle and virtuous Kuo Inosaka explained. That's not necessary. You can sleep here for now. I'll go ask Master if there are any other bedrooms. Good night. Dustless turned around and closed the door. Then he walked towards Aliceville's room. Unexpectedly, as soon as he opened the door, he saw her arguing with Wei Gong Kisi. Their faces were red, and it was obvious that they were both angry. How strange. The two of them can argue? Dustless had a strange expression. In his impression, this couple had always been the type that stuck together like honey. It was unprecedented for them to argue. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Take care. Seeing Dustless appear, Wei Gong Kisi left with a gloomy expression. Aliceville, you two. Dustless stopped himself. After all, this was a matter between the couple. As an outsider, he had no right to interrupt. Do you want to ask about Koei and Rin? I'm sorry, Dustless, but this is something I allowed. Aliceville explained with a bleak expression. Her bright eyes clearly understood Dustless' intentions. Is that so? Dustless nodded slightly. He couldn't help but ask. Then where's my new room? No, there's no new room. I deliberately let you two sleep together. Aliceville shook her head. Then she revealed a meaningful smile. Her face was very pale, and her smile looked more like a forced smile. I know why you want to ask, but this matter is very special. I can only wrong you for now. Special. Dustless smiled bitterly. Even if it was special, he couldn't betray his teammate. Even if he had a reason, he couldn't. Chapter 1702. As she looked at the aggrieved Dustless, the resentment on Aliceville's face was completely wiped away, and a wisp of a heartfelt smile flashed on her jade-like face. What's so funny? Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. He felt that this girl was gloating. Sigh. Aliceville frowned and sighed. Her delicate face gradually lost its luster. She said sadly, Kisi wanted to kill the mother and daughter. I couldn't bear it, so we inevitably quarreled. Kill the two of them? Are you referring to Tsukasa Inosaka and Rin Inosaka? Kisi seems to be a righteous partner. Is there no reason? He doesn't look like someone who would kill the innocent. Are you mistaken? Dustless frowned. Although he was ruthless, as long as those people didn't resist and restrain themselves, he could let them go. Of course there is a reason. Although what Kisi said is reasonable, I have already promised Tashimi Inosaka. If I hurt the two of them again, I can't accept it. Aliceville, you didn't do anything wrong. Dustless smiled and encouraged her loudly. You did the right thing. Remember, you are a human with flesh and blood. You are not a puppet created according to Kisi's plan. There is no need to follow his will. So you agree with my way of doing things? Aliceville retracted her sadness and revealed a cheerful smile. Of course I agree. Dustless smiled and reached out his hand. He added in his heart, as long as Kisi likes it, no matter if it is right or wrong, I will stand on his opposite side. Aliceville organized her thoughts and explained, Miss Wumi, I just received news that Yadong Ian from the Yadong family is also participating in this Holy Grail War. And the reason is related to Tsukasa Inosaka and Rin Inosaka. The reason why Kisi asked me to kill the two of them secretly was to prevent Yadong Yin from finding out that Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin are living in our house. Otherwise, Yadong Yin's berserker will very likely attack us. The enemy will also have an opportunity to take advantage of. Until now, Qixi is still afraid of Yanfeng Qi. Is it the only reason? Wei Gong Qixi's words make sense. Dustless nodded in agreement. This reason was barely acceptable. If Jantong Yin really knew that Kuei and Ling were here, he would definitely lead the berserker army to attack the Einsbaron family. But, changing the topic, Dustless glanced at Alice and Phil suspiciously. Then they can also live with Saber. There's no need for me to live with them. Alice, Phil, I also think that the mother and daughter can sleep with me. Don't you trust my ability? At the same time, Saber grumbled. For some reason, when she heard that Dustless was going to sleep with Ling and Kuei, she felt a little jealous. After all, they were allies in the trenches. It did not feel good to have them taken away from her just like that. Have the Hero King and the Conqueror King left. Noticing Saber's appearance, Dustless instinctively looked out of the window. The place where they were drinking was empty. The Hero King and the Conqueror King seemed to have left. This banquet could be considered the best banquet. If they were to meet again, they would fight to the death. That's a good idea, but it's impossible. Alice Phil's face was filled with worry. She decisively rejected the idea. That's impossible. You're Qixi's master. What if he uses a command spell on you? Although the probability of Wei Gong Qixi using a command spell on such a trivial matter was close to zero, nothing was absolute. It was better be safe than sorry. Moreover, Wei Gong Qixi was a person who was difficult to grasp. Moreover, in this Holy Grail War, all of Wei Gong Qixi's command spells remained intact because of Dustless. Until now, he had not used a command spell on Saber. Even if he were to use a command spell on Saber, it would not be a big deal. After all, the Holy Grail War was about to end. So, I'll be the scapegoat this time? Dustless glanced at Alice Phil in annoyance. He said in a troubled and depressed tone, "Doesn't that mean that it's useless for me to change rooms? Kuei and Ling will still be with me." "That's what I mean." Alice Phil nodded slightly. She looked at Dustless strangely and said, "You're just a heroic spirit. Why do you have to care so much?" Hey. You're talking as if heroic spirits have no human rights." Dustless made a scary expression. Unexpectedly, Alice Phil did not care. Instead, she made a face at him. She was not afraid of Dustless's threat at all. "I'm destined to be the scapegoat this time." Wu Chen looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. It was a sad thing to have such a troublemaking master. "Scapegoat? It's not as serious as you said. At most, I'll let you be a temporary bodyguard." As if she thought of something, Alice Phil's eyes rolled. She looked like a sly fox. Even though Kuei Dosaka and Tashimi Dosaka have been married for many years and even had 2 children, we were bathing together just now. I know her figure. Cough, cough, cough. Noticing that Alice Phil was getting further and further away from the topic, Wu Chen couldn't help but cough twice to interrupt Alice Phil's speech. He opened his mouth and deliberately changed the topic to Saber. As you can see, the task of protecting Alice Phil will be handed over to you. Saber, leave it to me. Also, don't do anything out of line. Otherwise, my sacred sword will go berserk. Saber instantly took out the Excalibur. It invisibly emitted an extraordinary aura. It was full of warnings and threats. This guy is deliberately making things difficult for me. Dustless glared at Alice Phil bitterly. He nodded at Saber and left. Chapter 17:03. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Alice Phil persuaded Wu Chun for nearly half an hour. Wu Chun was enlightened and reluctantly agreed to Alice Phil's ridiculous request. In Alice Phil's words, "You're a dead spirit. Why do you care so much?" Creak. Dustless pushed open the door gently. He thought that Rin and Akui Tosaka were already asleep, but the chandelier in the bedroom and living room were still on. Are they asleep? Why are the lights still on? Dustless shook his head when he realized that there was no movement in the bedroom. He didn't want to disturb the mother and daughter. He sat on the sofa and rested for a while. Then, he turned on the TV out of boredom. He turned the volume to the lowest and found a few bags of snacks to pass the time. Dustless accepted Alice Phil's suggestion to protect Rin and Akui Tosaka for the time being. He had to stay close to them. Jiantong Ian would definitely ask for the mother and daughter back. You pervert. You came back without saying a word. Could it be that you want to take advantage of the fact that we were asleep to ambush me and my mother? Pervert. Dustless was stunned when he heard the angry voice. He looked over and saw that it was Rin Tosaka. She snatched Dustless's potato chips and stuffed them into her mouth. Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say that. Dustless warned her sternly. He suddenly realized that this girl was too arrogant. Isn't that the truth? None of you heroic spirits are good people. Rin Tosaka crossed her arms and said proudly, you can trample on other people's lives just to satisfy your selfish desires. Even if Yin Fengili didn't kill my father, the rest of you would. It's just a matter of order. You're quite open-minded. That's what you mean. Dustless didn't comment. Even if Yin Fengili didn't kill Toshimi Nagasaka in the end, with Kamiya Kissy's personality, he would still order Saber to kill Toshimi Nagasaka. Like Toshimi Nagasaka said, it was just a matter of who came first. But no matter what, my duty now is to protect you and your mother. You can doubt me or hate me. This is already set in stone. Just accept it. Dustless handed Rin Inosaka a bag of snacks and continued to watch the boring soap opera. Rin Inbin frowned. Just as he was about to scold Dustless's voice rang out. Instead of scolding me, why don't you console your mother? But she's already asleep, so she can only vent all her anger on you heroic spirits. If it weren't for this disgusting war, Father wouldn't have left us. Rin Inosaka's eyes were red, and he looked like he was about to cry. Idiot. Seeing this, Wu Che scratched Rin Enbin's nose and reminded him, a child will always be a child. How can you understand the world of adults? If you were the mother of a child, would you cry in front of the child? This will only hurt the child even more. That's true. Rin Inosaka was stunned when he heard this. He quickly wiped his tears and ran into the room. A brat will always be a brat. His thoughts are indeed too simple. Dustless shook his head as he watched Rin leave. Swish, swish. Time decelerated. Under the black night sky, a pitch-black monster nimbly shuttled back and forth. He wore black armor, and his mask was embellished with a scarlet glow. He looked extremely terrifying and sinister. Ayo, 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 ayo. Especially from his mouth, there were bursts of hissing sounds that made one's heart tremble. His entire body was emitting an unknown black color of disgust. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Grim Reaper. Moreover, he was holding a sharp weapon that emitted cold light in all directions. Bang, bang, bang. A violent sound rang out. Suddenly, the black shadow smashed through the tempered glass and landed in the brightly lit living room. He then skimmed towards the bedroom with great familiarity. At this moment, an extremely dissatisfied voice rang out. Berserker. That fellow, the Hero King, calling you a mad dog isn't wrong. You sure are a vulgar creature that doesn't know any manners. Even the most ancient king, Gilgamesh, would not ignore my existence when he sees me. Yet you treat me like air. I'm really sorry, Berserker. If you don't leave on your own accord, then I'll force you to leave. You might even lose your life. Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes. They were also scarlet eyes. In his eye sockets, 3 mysterious tomo slowly rotated, emitting an ominous glow. Compared to the ferocious Berserker, the current Dustless gave off a more terrifying feeling. The former was more like an enraged lion, while the latter gave off the feeling of a cold executioner. Why is this guy here as well? Personal protection? Damn it. Among all the heroic spirits, this 8th heroic spirit is the most difficult to deal with. His strength is ridiculously strong. In the dark forest at the border of the castle, a figure was gasping for breath and wailing in pain. His face was twitching, and under his skin, it was as if there were countless insects scurrying around aimlessly. It was extremely disgusting. This person was Mamitsuki. When he found out that Akui Tasaka and Rin Tasaka had been taken to the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he rushed over without stopping. His intention was just as Alice Phil had guessed, to save the mother and son who had been through a lot. However, to his surprise, he never expected Dustless to be the personal protection. Boom, boom, boom. An explosion suddenly sounded. The invading berserker was kicked out by Dustless the same way he had invaded. Chapter 1704. Seeing Berserker's figure flying out, Jiantong Yin was stunned for a moment before he cursed. Berserker is a useless piece of trash. He's good at causing trouble for me, but when he's fighting with the enemy, he can only fight with someone like Archer. Oof, trash. Jiantong Yin complained loudly in disgust, as if Berserker was a nobody that was not worth mentioning. The actual result was not like that. Among all the heroic spirits, Berserker's statistics were considered top-notch. The fact that he could fight with Gold Flash was proof of his strength. Now, he was being tortured by Dustless because his opponent was too monstrous. Light speed kick. A laser beam fell on Berserker's body, and his body immediately flew out uncontrollably. Boom, boom, boom. On the surface, it looked like a light kick, but the real power was terrifying. The heavy armor on Berserker's abdomen collapsed due to the direct attack of the light speed kick. Ka-ka-ka. A large number of pieces of the armor were peeling off. Ka-ka-ka. The void suddenly cracked, and from mysterious unknown space, an ancient dark red katana swept out. The blade was red and simple, and just by looking at it, one could feel that it was very hot and fatal, as if he could be burned alive at any time. It was the super soul slasher that could destroy the world. Ryujin Jaka. Berserker, you can still hold on for so long. It's worthy of praise. This is really a miracle. Dustless smacked his lips and nodded with a smile. You can still hold on after taking a light speed kick. Although I don't know how strong your combat power is, I can be sure that your ability to take a beating is definitely second to none. Ow, ow. Woo, woo, woo. In the dark, Berserker seemed to have heard Dustless's ridicule clearly. Inside his helmet, there was a roar that sounded like a human. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Then, he turned into a gust of black wind and pounced straight at Dustless. Boom, boom, boom. The two immediately engaged in close combat, and bright sparks kept flickering. This is a good chance. Now that the 8th heroic spirit is being held back by Berserker, I can go find Kuei Helen and take advantage of this rare opportunity to rescue Kuei Helen and her daughter. Seeing this, Jiantong Yin was overjoyed. Looking at Berserker, who was fighting Dustless, he sighed in his heart. This heroic spirit, who always liked to attract hatred, had done its job this time. While the two were fighting, Tong Yin dragged his exhausted body and hurriedly slipped to Kuei and Ling's room. It was extremely difficult for him to walk, and he even fell down several times along the way. There was nothing he could do about it. All his energy had been sucked away by the worms wandering in his body. Now, he was just a shell that could control oil. Phew! Thank goodness Berserker is here. Otherwise, with the existence of the 8th heroic spirit, I would never be able to reach this door. 10 minutes later, Jiantong Yin finally came to Dustless's room and found Ling and Kuei's room. I'm relieved to be praised by you, but is it really okay for you to ignore me like this? Jiantong Yin was shocked by the sudden voice. He turned his head and saw Wu Chun, who looked lazy. He was sitting on the sofa, eating potato chips and drinking Coke. He looked very leisurely and comfortable. Impossible, you should be fighting Berserker. Why are you here now? Staring at Dustless, who was fighting Berserker not far away, Tong Yin glanced at Dustless, who was eating chips. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he was not seeing things. He was shocked to find that there were two Dustless in front of him. Idiot, the one fighting Berserker is just my shadow clone. Dustless glanced at the shocked Tong Yin and showed a look of disdain. Berserker would have a hard time dealing with my doppelganger, let alone my real body. I purposely suppressed the strength of my doppelganger so that Berserker could stall it. My main purpose was to lure you out. As I expected, you really fell for it. How pathetic. Tong Yin was furious when he heard Wu Chen's words. He stared at Wu Chen's mocking face. He felt that his dignity and IQ had been trampled on by this abominable guy. A mere heroic spirit dares to trick me? Eat him up. In his anger, Jiantong Yin suddenly waved his big hand. His skin suddenly burst open and countless larvae broke out from his skin. There were dozens or even hundreds of larvae that came to bite Wu Chen. The buzzing sound was unbearable. Being stared at by countless man-eating insects, no one could laugh it off. You're overestimating yourself. Dustless snorted and rolled his eyes. His pupils emitted a ferocious aura. At the same time, a strong wave of Ryatsu erupted from his body. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. All kinds of disgusting insects wandering in the space collapsed in an instant and turned into blood. The disgusting smell was as unbearable as the smell on Tong Yin's body. Stupid thing, Tong Yin. Have your intelligence been eaten by insects? You want to use such a rubbish trick to deal with a heroic spirit? Do you think I'm a small character like Tashimi Nagasaka? Chapter 1705. Hearing Dustless's mocking words, Jiotong Yin was enraged. After all, the so-called heroic spirits were just tools used by the masters. No matter how strong they were still just tools. Just like Lancer and Kenneth in the original novel. Lancer's combat power was amazing, and he even injured Saber. However, as the master, Kenneth ordered Lancer to commit suicide. Lancer couldn't escape his tragic fate and was killed by his own gun in the end. Damn you, you're just a heroic spirit. How dare you be so arrogant when you're already dead? Suddenly, Jiotong Yin realized that Akui and Rin were still in the castle. Jiotong Yin, who was in despair, suddenly regained his strength. The mother and daughter were his spiritual sustenance. Therefore, Jiotong Yin's little universe exploded again. Crack, crack, crack. Jiotong Yin's skin exploded again, and the insects that were hidden deep inside his body flew out again. These insects were abnormally fat. It was obvious that Jiotong Yin's body was a feast for them. Disgusting things. Dustless's face turned even colder. He quickly formed a hand seal, and a huge fireball flew out. Fire release. Great fireball technique. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the insects that were flying towards Jiotong Yin turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. Poochie. Tong Yin was forced to use his strength again and again. In the end, he fell against the wall. His throat rolled a few times, and then he spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. There were also a few insects coming out of his mouth. How rude of you to dirty someone's room with such disgusting things, especially when there are two ladies living here. Didn't your father, Jiotong Yin, teach you manners? Leaning on the sofa, Dustless lazily stared at Jiotong Yin. He also threw the potato chips aside. Even though the tempered glass was broken and the whole room was very cool, the disgusting smell still lingered in the room. Dustless also lost his appetite. Do you really want Akui and Rin to live in peace forever? Dustless glanced at Jiantong Yin and stared at his crazy face. His voice then sank. Or is it just your rationality that's causing trouble? Do you simply want to possess the mother and daughter? Bullshit. Hearing this, Jiantong Yin flew into a rage and roared. I regard Ling and Kuei as my family. How could I do such a thing? Don't slander me. I participated in this Holy Grail war because I don't want them to continue following that scumbag Tashimi. Is that so? Then I'll take back what I said earlier. By the way, I'd like to apologize. In other words, your only wish is for Kuei and Ling to live on without any worries, right? Dustless asked with a smile. He looked harmless, but deep in his eyes, there was a scheming light. Of course, for this goal, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Jiantong Yin, who was physically exhausted, finally knelt on the ground. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with determination. Wow, It's rare to see such a great person like you. I can't help but admire you. Dustless continued to smile, and then he instigated, however, even if I give the mother and daughter to you, what kind of protection can you give them? After you die, where can they go? Do you still need to say that? Of course, it's the Jiantong family. The two of them are going to live there for the rest of their lives, living a carefree and stable life like Sakura. Jiantong Ian answered without hesitation. Then here comes the problem. I don't need to say it. You know what kind of person Jiantong Ian is. For the Holy Grail, that guy is crazy. And Ling is a genius with an extremely high magical talent. Do you think Jiantong Ian will overturn her? Jiantong Ian, you are pushing the mother and daughter into the fire pit. Dustless's voice seemed to contain magic, making Jiantong Ian roll his eyes and fall silent. What do you want to say? Staring at Dustless, Jiantong Ian keenly realized that Dustless's words had other meanings. But it was undeniable that what he said made sense. With Jiantong Ian's personality, he would never let Ling and Kuei go. It was equivalent to pushing the mother and daughter into a merciless sea of fire. I can give the mother and daughter to you, but the premise is you have to kill your biological father, Jiantong Ian. That guy won't let Ling and Kuei go easily. Unless you kill that old man, I can only give you Kuei and Ling's protection. Dustless said sincerely. Kill him? Jiantong Ian was touched when he heard that. In his mind, a terrible old man at the end of his life appeared. His hoarse laughter lingered in his heart for a long time, forming a shadow pattern that was difficult to get rid of. Yes, after you die, that old man won't die. After this Holy Grail, there will be the next Holy Grail War. Maybe that old man will use some evil means. Enough? I agree to your conditions. A raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Jiantong Ian finally gritted his teeth and agreed to Dustless's conditions. At the same time, he roared, I will go back and kill that old man, Jiantong Ian now. I hope you will abide by the agreement when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiantong Ian dragged his tired body and left. Before he left, he did not forget to glance at the room where Ling and Kuei were sleeping soundly. A layer of transparent enchantment was clearly visible. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing, even though it was close at hand, it was still at the end of the world for Jiantong Ian. No wonder you were used. You were so naive. Even if you kill that old man, I won't give the mother and daughter to you. Jiantong Ian, just like you said before, after all, I am just a sandbard. The decision is in Alice Phil's hands. With a devilish smile, Dustless finally closed his eyes. Chapter 1706. Jiantong Family. Jiantong Ian returned to his bedroom in a daze. He pushed the door open and planned to lie down on the bed to rest for a while. Unexpectedly, a mysterious figure hit him with a stick. Bang! A heavy stick hit him, and Jiantong Ian was instantly smashed to the ground. A huge red mark appeared on his forehead where he was hit. Jiantong Ian turned his head and looked at him fiercely. Jiantong Xinyan, be careful. Be careful. I will kill you. Ha! Trash like you? Ian, since when did you like to boast so shamelessly? After being a hero spirit for a while, you still have confidence. Jiantong Xinyan walked out of the darkness with a walking stick. His eyes were shining like a ghost. It was creepy. His evil and bright eyes looked like a smart and cunning demon. Jiantong Xinyan, let Sakura go immediately. Changing the topic, Tong Ian used all of his strength to turn around and announce in an extremely cold tone, "You better know your place before I make a decision." Decision? What do you want to decide? Ian, I don't understand where your confidence comes from. Just based on your current half-dead state? You better know your place and help me get the Holy Grail. In that case, I can let Sakura go. If you fail, I can only apologize. Jiantong Xinyan sat on the sofa calmly and looked at Jiantong Ian, who was sweating profusely. He sneered and said, "It is impossible for you to get the Holy Grail in your current state. In this case, Sakura can't give up." Old man, you still haven't given up on Sakura? Jiantong Ian glared at him. His face was cold. Are you going to break the agreement? Agreement? Ridiculous. If you really remember the agreement, you should remember to help me get the Holy Grail. If you fail, the agreement will be invalid. Jiantong Xinyan turned his face shamelessly. You bastard! How dare you? Jiantong Ian clenched his fist when he heard that. The veins on his forehead bulged. The insects that had disappeared were running around in his skin again. Do you want to be rough with me? With your level? Before we fight, I have to warn you that if you use your heroic spirit rashly, you'll definitely die. Jiantong Zhongyin kindly reminded him that he had not obtained the Holy Grail yet. Naturally, he did not want Jiantong Ian to die just like that. I'll drag you down with me, Berserker. But Tong Ian didn't care. He shouted, and a black skeleton knight appeared in front of him. He said coldly, that guy's right. As long as I get rid of you, everything will be over. That guy. Tong Zhongyin was stunned when he heard this. He was secretly annoyed. A rare flame swept through his rotten heart. Someone actually taught his son to kill his father. It was extremely ironic. Ow, 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 ow. Berserker let out his signature low growl and rushed to Zhongyin Jiantong without hesitation. The big sword in his right hand was the first to cut a cold light into the void. Pucci. Tong Zhongyin's body was cut open by Berserker mercilessly. However, there was no blood flowing out as expected. After the old man was cut, his body turned into a large number of flying insects and scattered in all directions. Humph, old man, you run fast. Tong Ian snorted angrily. He dragged his exhausted body and ran around like a headless fly, looking for traces of Xiaoying. Damn it, which bastard dares to trick my son to kill me? If I find out, I'll definitely let him know the pain of being bitten by thousands of insects. In the gloomy underground warehouse, there were insects everywhere. There were so many of them that they almost covered the entire ground. TSK, TSK, old man, do you hate me that much? A sloppy voice suddenly sounded. Tong Zhongyin was shocked. He suddenly turned his head, and an unexpected figure was fixed in his eyes. The short black hair was messy, but there was a trace of elegance in it. Those dark eyes were eternal and unforgettable, especially the smile on the corner of his mouth. It made Tong Zhongyin even more furious. It was as if he was looking at a clown. It made his face gloomy. The eighth heroic spirit? Are you the one who instigated Yi Yin to kill me? Glaring at Dustless, Tong Zhongyin said hoarsely, that idiot was deceived by an outsider. His IQ is even lower than Xiaoying's. Useless trash. Ayaya, if Yi Yin finds out that you're scolding your son like this, he'll be very sad. However, there's one thing I agree with. He can't even kill a terminally ill old man. That guy is really not suitable to be a master. He's indeed useless. Dustless agreed with Tong Zhongyin's opinion. So you're going to personally lead the army to kill me? Tong Zhongyin's eyes were cold. He said, it's not that easy to kill me. After all, I whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before the old man finished speaking, Dustless turned into a ray of light and appeared in front of him. Then, the scorching heaven sort of clouds slashed down. Pucci. The golden light penetrated Tong Zhongyin's body. From his forehead to his lower body, he was cut open by Dustless. His eyes were staring straight at the indifferent face of Dustless. It seemed that he was unwilling to die. Old man, you can rest in peace. Glancing faintly at Tong Zhongyin, this guy's body immediately burned automatically. Amaterasu. The black fire engulfed Tong Zhongyin's whole body and annihilated him in an instant. Finally, all the insects in the warehouse were burned by Dustless. I still have to take Xiaoying away. Shaking his head in distress, his observation haki spread out, and Dustless began to look for Sakura's traces. This is what Koei Inosaka begged. Anyway, I'm bored, so I might as well help her. Dustless suddenly felt Tong Zhongyin's house because he suddenly thought of a big problem. He didn't have time to ask before letting Tong Zhongyin leave. Chapter 1707. In the dark courtyard, the path led to a secluded place. Under the moonlight, the lights were blurry. Sakura. Seeing the filthy light, Jiantong Yin was overjoyed. He dragged his body and rushed over. He could see Sakura's residence in the Jiantong family. Take Sakura away. Even if I die, I can rest in peace. A satisfied smile appeared on his pale face. To Jiantong Yin, the most important people in his life were Xiaoying, Koei Tasaka, and Rin Tasaka. TSK, what a touching relationship, Yin. A mocking tone came from the sky. When he was about to reach Sakura's room, a black shadow blocked his way. It was the last person Jiantong Yin wanted to see in his life. He was second only to Toshiomi Inaka. What are you doing in our house, you despicable fellow? You are not welcome here. Jiantong Yin's face was full of bad luck. His tone was full of disgust and fear. Not welcome? That's not up to you. I came here to ask you something. I also agreed to Sakura's request to take her away. Looking at Jiantong Yin's disgusted expression, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He did not care. In this world, there were many people who hated him and did not like him. But in the end, there was only one ending: death. Did Sakura agree? Jiantong Yin did not refute. He knew that Sakura had always been in Sakura's heart. However, Toshiomi Inaka was too cold. Sakura had no right to speak. Moreover, the magician family was only allowed to have one legal heir. In the end, Sakura was given to the Jiantong family. What do you think I am planning? Also, I just killed your chief father, Jiantong Yin. That old man raised a bunch of worms. It's disgusting. The fat worms appeared in his mind. Dustless looked disgusted. Mind your own business. Even if you don't intervene, I will kill that damn old man. Jiantong Yin did not thank Dustless. Instead, he scolded Dustless. You won't be able to last long in this state. Before that, I have a question that I want you to answer. After organizing his thoughts, Dustless's mind became active. When he was in the castle of the Ahrensberg family, he had neglected this important issue. How did you know that Rin Tasaka and Koei Tasaka are with the Ahrensberg family? Although the Tong family is very well informed, and I don't think you've been to the Einsbalen family. When you went to the castle just now, you were so familiar with it that you didn't even waste any time. You immediately confirmed that the mother and daughter were in my room. Of course, that's what Wei Gong Chisi told me. Sitting on the ground tiredly, Jiantong Yin explained, Wei Gong Chisi, that despicable fellow, hopes to use Koei and Ling as the price in exchange for our cooperation to eliminate Yan Feng Qili and his archer. No wonder you're so familiar with that castle. Dustless suddenly understood. No matter how despicable Wei Gong Chisi was, he didn't care. A person who is twisted by so-called justice would do anything crazy. Is that so? Then I have something important to tell you. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into a treacherous arc as he said, Wei Gong Chisi, that fellow. Previously, he still hoped to kill Koei. Ling letting him live is definitely a big problem. Why don't you go and kill that fellow? Did I hear wrongly? You wanted to kill Wei Gong Chisi? Her eyes were fixed on Dustless. Jiantong Yin felt that her brain wasn't enough. This guy in front of her wanted her to kill Wei Gong Chisi. Did he not know what this meant? If things went wrong, Wei Gong Chisi's heroic spirit, Saber, would disappear. Are you willing to do that? That fellow is a huge threat to Ling and Koei if he's alive. Dustless increased his tone and said, I don't mind telling you directly. That fellow is actually a pervert and a sex fiend. He is enough. I promise you that I'll kill that fellow Wei Gong Chisi. She glanced at Xiao Ying's room with a reluctant expression. But in the end, she gritted her teeth and left. Idiot, you think you can kill Wei Gong Chisi with just you? That fellow has Saber's protection. Furthermore, Wei Gong Chisi is an extremely cunning and sinister person. Dustless shook his head and turned to Xiao Ying's room. Creak. The door was gently pushed open by Dustless. Unexpectedly, before Dustless could take the initiative to summon her, a tender and soft fist smashed towards Dustless's face. Bang! Dustless casually raised his hand to block the fist. He frowned slightly. The person who attacked him was Jiantong Yin. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. She was like a walking corpse without any vitality. Grandpa said that other than him, anyone who dares to approach me is a bad person. Xiaoying muttered vaguely. There was no emotion in her voice. She looked like a zombie. Has she been brainwashed? Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this, and then he remembered the character of Jiantong Yin. He couldn't help but say strangely, "That old man wants Xiaoying to kill Jiantong Yin?" As expected, he's an old monster. Bang! Dustless knocked Xiaoying unconscious with a karate chop. He tried to use the Tensigen to modify Xiao Ying's memory and erase the tragic memory of the Jiantong family from the depths of her soul. I hope that Jiantong Yin can cut off Wei Gongqixi's hand. It's best to make him disabled, so that he won't be scheming all day long. Dustless left the Jiantong family with Xiao Ying in his arms and quickly rushed to the castle of the Ahrensberg family. He had a feeling that Jiantong Yin will definitely teach Wei Gongqixi a lesson. Chapter 1708. In the forest near the castle of the Ahrensberg family. You are too reckless. That Dustless is very powerful. I am sure that even Saber would not be able to defeat him, let alone your berserker. In the dark forest, a few figures could be vaguely seen. Jiantong Yin, let's come up with another plan. I will help you sneak Katsuki Tasaka and Rin Tasaka away. As a price, you have to help me kill Yanfeng and Chili. Wei Gongqixi looked at the white-haired Jiantong Yin and suddenly felt that something was wrong with him. This guy's eyes. Something is wrong. Looking at Jiantong Yin and Berserker, who was beside him, Wei Gongqixi was not worried. He could summon Saber here instantly with a command spell. No, I have changed my plan. He sinisterly approached Wei Gongqixi. Tong Yin's calm eyes instantly turned scarlet. His killing intent was completely revealed and filled with a frightening killing intent. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, Jiantong Yin attacked relentlessly. His body turned into a gust of wind and pounced on Wei Gongqixi, who was still in a daze. Gulp! He grabbed Wei Gongqixi's vital part mercilessly. What are you trying to do? Realizing that his vital part as a man was being grabbed, Wei Gongqixi shivered and looked at Jiantong Yin, who was in a frenzy. You bastard pervert! I will take you down with me, even if I die. Jiantong Yin's veins were bulging on his right hand as he increased his strength. This guy is so evil. He wants Wei Gongqixi but can't be a man. Dustless was speechless. He thought that Jiantong Yin would just cripple Wei Gongqixi. He did not expect Jiantong Yin to be so ruthless. He wanted to crush Wei Gongqixi's balls. No, I have to help Jiantong Yin once. I like this kind of method. Dustless laughed. He knew that Jiantong Yin had mastered some special magic. He might be able to turn back time. If that was the case, Jiantong Yin's sneak attack would have been wasted. If that's the case, then Dustless focused on Wei Gongqixi's body, purposely avoiding the fatal wound. He mercilessly threw out a pitch-black dagger towards Wei Gongqixi's body. Swish! Swish! The tip of the pitch-black dagger was shining with a cold light. This is bad. That bastard Jiantong Yin actually has an accomplice. Hearing the sharp sound behind him, Wei Gongqixi turned his head and saw a dagger emitting a cold light. Immediately, his heart turned cold. Just as he was about to cast a spell to dodge, it was already too late. The merciless cold light pierced through Wei Gongqixi's body, causing blood to flow out. Although he wanted to kill this bastard, Dustless had to admit that if he lost Wei Gongqixi, Saber would immediately collapse and disappear. Poochie! The dagger pierced through his body, leaving a bloody hole. However, because Dustless had purposely avoided the vital parts, Wei Gongqixi's injuries weren't too serious. Poochie! At the same time, seeing this rare opportunity, Jiantong Yin also launched a fatal attack. He clenched his fist and crushed Wei Gongqixi's balls. From now on, there was one less man in the world, and one more eunuch. Gongqixi was in so much pain that his head was covered in sweat. His crotch was covered in fresh blood. He fell to the ground and howled in pain. His scarlet eyes stared at Jiantong Yin, wishing that he could turn him into a human stick. This ridiculous bastard. First, he scolded him for being a perverted pervert. Now he crippled him. Wei Gongqi's heart was deeply traumatized. I will definitely kill you. Definitely. Wei Gongqi roared in his heart. He swore that he had never wanted to kill someone as much as he did now. It was all because of this bastard in front of him that he could no longer be a man. Wei Gongqi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This was a great humiliation to him. It was even more humiliating than what he had accumulated in his life, especially when he was inexplicably crippled by Jiantong Yin. Wei Gongqi felt very wrong by being called a perverted pervert. He didn't do anything worse than a beast, but he had become such a scapegoat. He even had the thought of dying. Well done. Dustless was full of smiles. He had never realized that Jiantong Yin was so cute. Pung pung pung. A series of messy footsteps suddenly sounded. Dustless raised his head and saw an untimely figure. Her panicked face stared at the blood on Wei Gongqi's crotch in disbelief. She then looked at Jiantong Yin, who had a crazed expression, and suddenly understood something. Jiu Wumi? This fellow really likes to meddle in other people's business. Dustless frowned inwardly. He was rather dissatisfied with her appearance. He then lowered his head and pondered for a moment. In the end, he rushed out from the darkness. Not only that, Saber also rushed over. Alice and Phil also did the same. Wei Gongqi's heart-wrenching scream just now was too heart-wrenching. What a pity. I let go of a chance to torture Wei Gongqi. Sigh. Dustless smacked his lips and sighed in pity. Looking at Saber's humiliated appearance, he knew that she would not let Jiantong Yin off so easily. After all, although Wei Gongqi was a rotten person, he was still Saber's master. If Jiantong Yin was allowed to leave, Saber's dignity would also be damaged. Chapter 1709. Chisi, are you all right? Aliceville came over and asked with concern. Looking at the blood that stained his pants, her face was filled with embarrassment. Aliceville, don't worry. Chisi has only become a eunuch. It's not a big deal. You know that he has strong willpower. You don't have to comfort him. He'll be able to pull through. Dustless's weird voice rang out. Damn it. No matter how strong your willpower is, you can't take this lying down. Why don't you try? Don't just stand there and talk. Chisi, who was already furious, was enraged by Dustless's words. He roared at Dustless. Have you caught the despicable person who plotted against me? I must tear him into pieces. The person who plotted against you? Saber revealed an ashamed expression and said apologetically, Master, I'm sorry. The mysterious person who plotted against you. When I rushed over, there was no trace of anyone else. He might have run away. Run away? Useless fellow. Glancing at Saber coldly, Wei Gongqi did not say anything. You, Saber frowned and looked at the furious Wei Gongqi. She was also dissatisfied and said angrily in her heart, If you didn't come out on your own, how could this have happened? Now, other than the problem, you are blaming others? Disgusting. Unknowingly, Saber started to have bad intentions towards Wei Gongqi. She felt that she had to explain to him. The corner of her mouth twitched. Just as she was about to argue with Wei Gongqi, a thumb blocked Saber's lips. Saber, you are just a heroic spirit. No matter how you explain, it will be your fault in the end. Dustless shook his head, indicating to Saber that there was no need to say more. The furious Wei Gongqi would not listen. It was just a waste of time. But this fellow is really despicable. I have told Wei Gongqi time and time again not to act alone. Now that there is a problem, he was even turned into glancing at Wei Gongqi. Saber's face turned slightly red, and the words that were about to come out of her mouth turned into a smile. Dustless smiled maliciously and cleared his throat. He looked at Wei Gongqi and encouraged him. Qi, isn't it just having your balls crushed? I believe that you can definitely handle it. The voice that filled the entire sky lingered in the void for a long time, as if it wanted to spread throughout the entire world. You bastard! Wei Gongqi's face turned green when he heard this. How could such a thing be said so casually? staring at Dustless, who was shouting at the top of his lungs. As if he wanted the whole world to know that he was a eunuch, Wei Gong Keisai wanted to strangle this bastard Dustless to death. Why didn't you use a loudspeaker to publicize it? Saber, get rid of Berserker and his master, Yadong Yiyan. Remember, don't kill this brat. I want to repay this brat 100-fold and let him understand my pain. His eyes flickered with the light of revenge as Wei Gong Qixi roared crazily. Because of Yadong Yiyan, his self-esteem had suffered a serious blow. If he didn't get rid of him, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. I will bring you back for now. Aliceville glanced at Wei Gong Qixi with a complicated gaze and carefully supported him. Looking at that crazy face, Aliceville gradually distanced herself from Wei Gong Qixi. I'm sorry, Jiantong Yiyan. Your usefulness ends here. Dustless and Saber blocked in front of Yadong Yiyan and thought to themselves, since you will die no matter what, let me give you a dignified death so that you won't be captured alive by Wei Gong Qixi and receive the same punishment as him. You bastard! Yadong Yiyan's expression froze. Looking at Dustless's calm face, he asked, Shameless, don't tell me you want to swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Before Yadong Yiyan could finish his words, a ray of light suddenly attacked. Dustless's broad hand directly grabbed Yadong Yiyan's head. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. Yadong Yiyan's mouth was also blocked by Dustless, making it difficult for him to speak. Kill you, I must kill you. How dare you betray me? Yadong Yiyan roared crazily in his heart. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent. He didn't expect Dustless to be so dustless. He had clearly said that he would take care of Wei Gong Qixi, this shameless bastard. Who would have thought that this bastard would actually betray him now? Putting aside the previous agreement, with his current attitude, he even wanted to kill Yadong Yiyan to silence him. He didn't want him to tell the truth. Your eyes are really scary. In fact, you don't have to hate me so much. Dustless leaned close to Yadong Yiyan's ear and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I think you should thank me, your savior. I will take care of Kuei, Ling, and Sakura in the future. Farewell, Yadong Yiyan. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless's strength exploded. He also increased the strength of his face that was grabbing Yadong Yiyan's head. Ka-ka-ka. One could hear the sound of bones breaking. That pair of big hands crushed the skin on Yadong Yiyan's face. Blood kept flowing. No, it was too much to say that it was blood. The skin on his cheeks burst. Other than blood, there was also a large number of fat worms flowing out. Bastard! I can't let this guy go so easily. Yadong Yiyan was furious. He clenched his fists and roared in his heart, Berserker, tear this guy into pieces. Tear him into pieces. Ow, ow, ow. Receiving Yadong Yiyan's order, Berserker roared towards the sky and attacked. Chapter 17:10. Berserker's strength was actually not bad. Among the heroic spirits, his stats were considered outstanding. However, he was not very lucky this time. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Berserker attacked Dustless with his sword. The sharp edge of the sword slashed down horizontally, carrying the anger of Jiantong Yiyan. It looked like he was going to cut Dustless in half. Clang, clang. A dull roar spread out, and a spark appeared in an instant. Berserker's fatal attack was also blocked. A delicate and seemingly weak figure stepped forward without hesitation. At the critical moment, Saber's Excalibur blocked the dangerous cold light. Ah, what a scary heroic spirit, Dustless said in a frivolous tone, but his face was expressionless. Leave this guy to me. Berserker gives me a feeling of déjà vu. Saber stared at the black-armored swordsman in front of her cautiously and suspiciously. She actually had some impression of his seemingly messy swordsmanship. Do whatever you want. Just don't let this guy run away. Dustless gave Saber a reassuring look, and his teasing gaze fell on Jiantong Yiyan again. Clang, 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 clang. Under the night sky, two agile and vigorous figures fought with all their strength. Every time their swords collided, there would be dazzling sparks. King Arthur. Berserker always let out a vague and hoarse roar from his throat. It was as low and terrifying as a beast. What a troublesome guy. Saber forced Berserker back with both hands. Every time she slashed, she used all her strength. The person who was in the way is gone. Dustless saw this and sighed heavily. He immediately looked up and stared at the angry Jiantong Yiyan. He smiled unscrupulously. Don't show such an angry expression. If you don't control your emotions, the worms in your body will consume you faster. I will be very sad if you die. After all, we are allies, Yiyan. Humph, put away the hypocritical smile of yours. If you were betrayed and abandoned like trash after being used by others, how would you feel? Jiantong Yiyan asked. You are such a cunning person. I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Really? Then I'll make sure you can't even be a ghost. Dustless snorted indifferently. Then he sneered and said, if I crush your body and soul, I'll see how you're going to take revenge on me. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Tong Yiyan clenched his teeth when he heard Yi Chen's words. The skin all over his body burst open. Hundreds and thousands of fat teeth opened up and bit towards Yi Chen. A deathbed struggle. When Dustless saw this, he glanced at the group of engraved worms and rolled his eyes. The fire that was not there started burning without any sign. Tens Ho! In the blink of an eye, the fire annihilated all the insects. Not even the residue was left. They evaporated into thin air. Not only that, under the control of Dustless, the black ominous fire spread to the head of Jiantong Yiyan. It hurts. What kind of will-o'-the-wisp is this? It couldn't be extinguished. The asterisk imminent. Jiantong Yiyan screamed in pain and fear. He fell to the ground and rolled violently. He tried to put out the fire on his body, but the reality was too cruel. Not only did the fire show no sign of extinguishing, but as time went by, it gradually became bigger and bigger. In the end, it swallowed him whole in an instant. This fire is called Tens Ho. You want to extinguish it? How stupid you are. Didn't I just say that I'm going to burn your soul? Dustless said in a cold tone. He did not have a good impression of Jiantong Yiyan. Jiantong Yiyan said that he liked Isaka Kue, but the person who killed Isaka Kue was actually this guy. He was a real hypocrite. Your soul has been burned by Tens Ho. I'll see how you won't let me go even if you become a ghost. Looking at Jiantong Yiyan, who was screaming in pain, Dustless had a pleasant expression on his face. Jiantong Yiyan's screams, which sounded like he wanted to die, sounded very funny to Dustless. After about a minute, Jiantong Yiyan's screams gradually died down. The night sky returned to its peaceful state. Looking up at the sky, the stars in the galaxy were shining brightly. The night sky was beautiful. There shouldn't be any problems over there, right? As far as his eyes could see, in the dark forest, there were two shadows fighting against each other. Every move and every collision would cost the lives of both parties. Forget it. I'm bored anyway. Let's go take a look. Dustless was humming a tune. His skinny body walked past Jiantong Yiyan, who was now a mummy. He walked straight to the place where Spear and Berserker were fighting. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With a gentle breeze, Jiantong Yiyan's body was completely eroded. He turned into black powder and disappeared with the wind. His name was completely erased from the world. Berserker has quite a lot of mana stored in his body. Even though Jiantong Yiyan, the master, is dead, this guy can still continue to fight with Saber. However, it's only a matter of time before he loses. Even though the master was dead, Sarvant would not disappear in a short period of time. As long as he had enough mana in his body, it would not be a problem for him to last for a few days. Once his magic power was exhausted, Sarvant would vanish and evaporate. Chapter 17:11. Clang, clang, clang. Even though Master was dead, Berserker was still as ferocious as ever. He and Saber were engaged in a fierce battle. Berserker seemed to have realized that he would soon leave this world. Not only did he not weaken his attacks, but he also kept the remaining magic power in his body and unleashed it all. Instead, he became more and more courageous as he fought. He used up all of his magic power. His obsession with Saber was so deep that it felt like he wanted to drag her down with him. With Saber's arrogant personality, even if I helped her once, she would not appreciate it. Instead, she would blame me for being a busybody. Are all the ancient people so stubborn? What a troublesome problem girl. Staring at Saber with a headache, Dustless sighed. For Saber, the so-called dignity of knight should not be trampled on. It was more important than anything else. Even if she died, she would not care. But, looking at Berserker's heavy armor, Dustless warned, Saber, put some distance between you and that guy for now. Dustless, you, Saber frowned. She felt an unknown power flowing in Dustless's body. She angrily stopped him and said, Dustless, even you want to trample on my dignity as a knight like Wei Gong Kisi. However, Dustless was silent. He ignored Saber and stared at Berserker with his cold eyes. Path of destruction, black coffin. Swoosh, swoosh. The black light that filled the sky bombarded Berserker's body. He was immediately pushed back. Berserker's tough armor also had visible cracks. Dustless, you. Seeing such a scene, Saber was not happy. Instead, she was furious. For the first time, she was filled with dissatisfaction and resentment towards Dustless. Saber, if you want to punish him, it's not too late to see the situation. Pointing at Berserker's direction, Dustless said, This guy's true colors are about to be revealed. True face? Saber was stunned when she heard that. She looked at Berserker and saw that the cracks on his armor were getting bigger and bigger until they spread all over his body. Saber's gaze was fixed on Berserker's body. Attacked by the black coffin, the steel armor gradually peeled off. Saber's beautiful eyes suddenly shrank, revealing a familiar face. Lancelot, why are you Berserker? Saber's mind went blank as she stared at the face. Roar. King Arthur, after Dustless destroyed his impenetrable armor, Berserker's consciousness became much clearer. Although he was still very violent, he was not as crazy and reckless as before. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, Berserker only hesitated for a moment before attacking Saber with his relic. His speed was so fast that even Dustless could only catch a glimpse of a blurry shadow. Seeing that Berserker was about to approach Saber while the latter was still in shock, Dustless had no choice but to interrupt the match and help Saber. 10,000 Celestial Attraction. A strong gravitational force suddenly appeared, and Berserker's body suddenly became sluggish. His body could no longer move forward as Dustless's huge hand ruthlessly sucked him in. Damn you! Interrupting a battle between knights, your crime, is enough for me to behead you 10,000 times. The armor on his body collapsed and disappeared. Berserker's eyes were filled with madness. He was no longer stuttering like before. Instead, he was speaking very fluently. His eyes were clear and bright, as if he had found his reason after going berserk, even if it was only for a short moment. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dustless suddenly interrupted him, and Berserker was furious. Following the inertia of the gravitational force, his relic was aimed at Dustless's head. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The tip of the sword was extremely tricky, and there was no way to avoid it. It seemed like he could only take the attack head-on. Seeing Dustless's tragic death, Lancelot Berserker's face showed a gloomy arc. He laughed ferociously like a demon. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew in the air, and Berserker's right hand that was holding the relic was numb. He thought to himself, could it be that his body is made of diamond? How could it be so hard? Berserker looked at Dustless in confusion, and his jaw almost dropped. Gulp. Berserker's throat rolled as he looked over. His precious artifact was right on top of Wu Chen's forehead. It looked as if his head was about to be chopped off. However, who would have thought that a thumb would be as indestructible as a meteorite, blocking the divine sword that could cut through iron like mud? That's right, it was just a finger. Are you kidding me? This guy is not a god. How could he block my relic with just a finger? Berserker's face turned pale, and when he was about to attack, Dustless's cold and warning voice was heard. Berserker, your opponent is not me, and I am not interfering in the battle between knights. Dustless said, and stared at Berserker's crazy eyes. Of course, if you insist on treating me as your enemy, then I will be a qualified enemy and cripple you. Humph. If you did not interrupt my battle, Arthur's head would have been taken by me. How dare you say that you did not interrupt the battle between knights? Ridiculous. Berserker sneered. A battle between knights? How dare you say that? Dustless looked at Berserker with disdain and mocked. You knew that Saber was in a daze, but you attacked her at all costs. Is the battle between knights so dirty? Berserker's face turned red, and he shouted angrily. She was distracted, and she deserved to be killed. She can't blame anyone else. You're not fit to call yourself a knight. In my eyes, you are a treacherous villain. Dustless sneered, and he hated Lancelot. This guy used to be one of King Arthur's knights of the Round Table, and Saber trusted him so much that she gave the task of protecting the queen to Lancelot. Then, a very melodramatic scene happened. Lancelot and Saber's queen fell in love. It was precisely because Saber had absolute trust in Lancelot that she gave him such an important task. However, who would have thought that Lancelot was so shameless that he seduced the queen at that time? Although Saber forgave Lancelot in the end, in Dustless's eyes, this kind of behavior was unforgivable. He deserved to be cut into pieces 10,000 times. You should be thankful that you have a king like Saber. If it were me, Gilgamesh, or the Conquest King, you would have long been skinned alive. Now, you still have the face to blame others. Scum. Chapter 17:12. UB** starred. Berserker's face turned red after being scolded by Dustless. His eyes were filled with uncertainty as he stared at Dustless's face. His surging murderous intent could not be concealed and burst out like a tide. If you want to die, then come at me immediately, trash. Dustless continued to attack unceremoniously. Just looking at this idiot made him feel unlucky. If Dustless were Saber, he would definitely cut this D**MNB* starred into 8 pieces and feed him to the dogs. I'm afraid that I hate people like you the most. Seeing that Dustless was going to continue attacking him, Berserker could not bear it anymore. Finally, he could not continue to be a coward. Otherwise, he would be scolded to death by Dustless. Berserker, who could not stand it any longer, charged at Dustless. Oomph. Dustless snorted when he saw this. When he was about to give Berserker a fatal blow, Saber once again blocked Berserker without giving him any face. This guy is my prey. Saber stood in front of Dustless and said resolutely, Lancelot, I need to deal with him personally to end all the grudges between us. What a stubborn woman. Dustless withdrew his oppressive aura. He also understood that he could not stop her. Saber's stubbornness gave him a headache, and it was not suitable for him to intervene. After all, this was a personal grudge between Saber and Lancelot. Before leaving, Dustless suddenly stopped and looked at Berserker. Then, he cautiously said, You'd better be careful. In the castle of the Arensberg family. At this moment, one of the best doctors in Dongmu City was gathered in Wei Gongqissi's room. After all, Wei Gongqissi's balls were crushed by Jiantong Yin. This was definitely explosive news. When will his injuries recover? He still has a lot of work to do. Jiu Meimi saw the doctor coming out of the room and was relieved. Treatment? With all due respect, you should prepare for the funeral of that Mr. Wei Gongqissi. Kyumeimi's face was full of expectation. Who would have thought that the doctor would mercilessly give her an answer that would make her collapse? He immediately turned his head and wanted to leave, leaving behind Kyumeimi, who was possessed. Please wait a moment. Are you saying that you are going to prepare for Qisi's funeral? After a while, Jiu Meimi, who had regained her senses, was greatly shaken. Her mind was in a mess. Wasn't it just crush that thing? Even if it was completely cut off, it wouldn't be so exaggerated. Cough, cough, cough. Mr. Doctor, please don't be in a hurry to leave. I still want to ask more questions. Jiu Meimi stared at the doctor and asked awkwardly. It shouldn't be that fatal, right? Cut's life force and willpower are both very strong. Willpower? That kind of tenacious spirit also depended on what kind of illness it was. This patient still has a wound on his abdomen. Although it is not fatal as expected, it has seriously weakened the patient's physical condition. Especially the condition of the gentleman on the bed is special. It has caused serious psychological trauma and obstacles. It will be very difficult for him to recover. I don't know how long he can hold on. If he can't hold on, maybe he will die in a few days. The doctor shook his head and then showed an expression of helplessness. After nagging for a while, he left. Although some diseases could be cured, the psychological trauma was too serious. He can't be saved. Why is Wei Gong Qi so useless? Did he grow up without doing anything? Wu Chun, who had just rushed back, was also greatly shocked when he heard this. He originally only wanted to give Wei Gong Qi a blow, but he didn't expect that the blow would go too far, leaving this guy with a serious psychological barrier. It sounded like he would die immediately if things went wrong. It seems that this time, if Wei Gong Qi dies, then who will provide Saber's magical power? Dustless frowned secretly. Now that Wei Gong Qi is like this, it is difficult for him to survive, let alone provide Saber's magical power. According to the doctor's meaning just now, if Wei Gong Qi can get out of the psychological trauma, there will be no problem for him to recover. But if he gives up, it is only a matter of time before he dies. Should I become Saber's master? A thought flashed across Wu Chen's mind as he muttered to himself. Although he was only a heroic spirit now, he was only a fake. I can let Wei Gong Qi take the initiative to transplant the command seal to me. Dustless's Sharingan flashed a strange light, and he smiled gloomily. This step is actually very simple. It can be completed with Genjutsu. It is really not a big problem. The key problem is Saber. If she is not willing, Dustless will be useless even if he becomes her master. Saber believes in the knight's path. It is impossible and unrealistic for her to betray Wei Gong Qi for no reason. Unless Wei Gong Qi does something that Saber can't tolerate, then she can get rid of him. Forget it. Consider yourself lucky. For the time being, help Wei Gong Qi live for 2 more days. After careful calculation in his heart, Dustless finally chose to let Wei Gong Qi live for a while. He could use wood release to slow down Wei Gong Qi's illness. Of course, it was impossible to let him recover completely. Dustless only hoped that this guy could live for 2 more days. It would be best if he could hang on for a while. Even if he died, he had to wait until the end of the Holy Grail War. Chapter 17:13. In Wei Gong Qi's room, Alice Phil sat beside the bed and stared at the haggard man. She didn't know why, but she wasn't as sad as she used to be. The heart-wrenching pain was no longer there. Now, all that was left was pure worry. It was similar to the worry between friends. Ever since Dustless and Saber appeared, her relationship with Wei Gong Qi gradually went in the opposite direction. It developed further and further until today, especially because of the relationship between Takumi Inosaka and Rin Inosaka. The two of them had a rare quarrel. Creak. The tightly closed door was gently pushed open. Dustless walked in quietly. "You're here." Alice Phil's face outlined a forced smile. It looked extremely forced. Her delicate snow-white face was even paler than usual. Her spirit was also very dispirited and weak. "Alice Phil, don't worry. If you're so sad, he wouldn't want to see it." Walking in front of Alice Phil, Dustless patted her shoulder and comforted her gently. "Alice Phil, go out and rest for a while. Leave this to me for the time being." Alice Phil didn't pay attention to him. Instead, she suddenly attacked Dustless. "Alice Phil, you're—" Dustless was dumbfounded. He looked at Alice Phil, who was close to him. A strange fragrance entered his nose along Alice Phil's face. Suddenly, he felt that his waist was bound. His chest was also squeezed by her proud cleavage. Looking down, Alice Phil suddenly hugged Dustless. "I'm so scared." After being silent for a while, Alice Phil said softly with tears in her eyes, "Maybe soon I'll leave this world and rush to that unfamiliar world." "That world?" Dustless frowned slightly and asked, Are you talking about the world after people die? Don't worry, you're so beautiful. Even those little ghosts of the king of hell will be charmed by you. They can't bear to let you die. Poochie. Alice Phil suddenly laughed. She threw a charming glance at Dustless and said, loquacious. Sometimes, I wonder if you're still alive. What you do and what you think are completely different from those hero spirits. Really? Do you really want to live that much? That way, you two can have a rendezvous like this, right? An extremely oppressive and gloomy voice that was as indignant as a volcano suddenly sounded. You're awake? Dustless and Alice Phil were startled. They looked towards the source of the sound, and to their surprise, it was Wei Gong Chi-Si whose face was filled with black lines. He stared at Dustless and Alice Phil ferociously. Seeing this, Alice Phil was overjoyed. TSK, you're awake. I was worried. You're worried? It's all bullshit. Wei Gong Chi-Si's eyes widened. He was so angry that he vomited 3 liters of blood. He glared angrily. He didn't expect that Alice Phil and Dustless would get together right after he fell ill. Furthermore, it's fine if the two of you are having an affair, but you're even having an affair in my ward. Doing this kind of thing in front of me, is that exciting or fulfilling? Preposterous. How can you bully me like this? Too shameless. The two of you, you only feel a sense of accomplishment when you do this kind of thing in front of me. I suddenly woke up. Did I disturb the two of you? May I ask if you need me to continue pretending to be unconscious? Wei Gong Chi-Si stared fiercely at Dustless. His stomach swelled up, and it looked like he was about to explode. Fisk, you're mistaken. The truth is not what you think. Seeing this, Alice Phil hurriedly let go of Dustless. Her face was red as she looked at Wei Gong Chi-Si's red cheeks. She couldn't help but feel a shame deep in her heart. At this moment, Dustless suddenly stood up and didn't give Alice Phil a chance to explain. Wei Gong Chi-Si, don't you know? You're about to die. I'm helping you take care of Alice Phil. You should be thanking me, especially now that you're just a eunuch. Moreover, you're about to die soon. You could die in peace. Leave Alice Phil and your daughter to me. Wu Chan said righteously. Moreover, he pulled Alice Phil into his arms in front of Wei Gong Chi-Si. Moreover, he even kissed her delicate thin lips even more fiercely. Poochie, seeing this scene, Wei Gong Chi-Si was momentarily stunned. In the end, he couldn't hold back the fire in his heart. He spat out a mouthful of old blood and fainted. Dustless, what are you talking about? Alice Phil hurriedly pushed Dustless away. Looking at the unconscious Wei Gong Chi-Si, she hurriedly ran out. Moreover, she was extremely anxious as she called for a doctor. TSK, Wei Gong Chi-Si, a scum like you is really lucky. Looking at Alice Phil's disappearing figure, Dustless was rather envious of this guy's luck with women. Men die for those who understand them. Women dress up for those who love them. Now that Alice Phil was so anxious, it meant that although she and Wei Gong Chi-Si were estranged, she still hadn't forgotten Wei Gong Chi-Si. Forget it. I'll temporarily help you maintain your life for a few days. At least before this Holy Grail War ends, you definitely can't die. Walking in front of the sickbed, Dustless's palm emitted an emerald glow. Using the wood release method, he injected a large amount of life force into Wei Gong Chi-Si's body. What a sin! This brat better not die from anger because of me. Looking at the blood-red sheet, Dustless secretly scolded Wei Gong Chi-Si in his heart. This brat is too weak. I only took a little liberties with your wife. Is there a need to be so sad? Anyway, you have a mistress, Jiyu Mamie. With her, you don't have to worry about your future life at all. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.